Chapter 472. Delta Origi was actually using these ghostly shadows to improve her cultivation. Although Lung Shichi didn't know how Delta Origi did it, it was clear that this was a rare opportunity for Delta Origi. Opportunities always coexisted with danger. Delta Origi could turn the crisis of being haunted by evil spirits into an opportunity for herself. That was her ability. Moreover, Lung Shichi could see that Delta Origi's spiritual power was becoming more and more stable through his Byakugan. This meant that she still had room to improve, so he couldn't disturb her now. Lung Shichi's eyes silently turned to the other people. He thought to himself, those people should also know that there is someone in the ghostly shadows, but they don't know who is inside. I have to delay them for a while. So he said, everyone, I feel the fluctuation of spiritual power in the depths of the ghostly shadows. I'm afraid that someone is trapped inside. Yes, but who could that person be? And when did he come here? Zhuge asked. He was also puzzled. Wu Diao crossed his arms and said carelessly, who cares who he is? He's quite capable to be able to survive until now after being surrounded by so many ghostly shadows. Why don't we let this person help us test these ghostly shadows? It's best if we can find their weakness. Your wishful thinking is good. But have you ever thought that the person trapped is one of your people? Why don't we work together to deal with the ghostly shadows? Shi Feiying said with one hand on her waist. Hearing this, Wu Diao smiled and didn't answer, because he could see that Shi Feiying was a little anxious. From the looks of it, there were only 7 people standing here, and 3 of them were on Wu Diao's side. In addition to Wang Zhu, there was a person with dark skin who was also at the 8th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Although there were only 2 people, Lung Shichi and Di Chuan. Di Chuan was at the 9th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. In terms of strength, he was not much weaker than Wu Diao and Zhuge. As for Lung Shichi, it was needless to say that he was a fierce man who had killed a master of Gang Spirit Realm. His strength was definitely the strongest among them. Therefore, Zhuge and Shi Feiying were the weakest among the 3 parties in terms of both numbers and strength. This caused Shi Feiying's heart to be filled with anxiety and uneasiness. If it was their people who were besieged by the phantoms, it would be best if they could rescue them. Lung Shichi, of course, did not want the situation to turn cold. He continued, both of you have a point, but it seems that the person inside is still holding on. Why don't we wait and see? If that person can't hold on any longer, it won't be too late for us to make a move. Wu Diao thought for a moment. Even if he managed to rescue them by then, they wouldn't be able to fight anymore. So he nodded to show that he could agree. Zhuge and Shi Feiying could only agree, both sides taking a step back. In this way, they stood there quietly. Everyone found that the number of phantoms would decrease after a while. Although the decrease was not much, after half an hour, the number of phantoms had decreased by half. Except for Lung Shichi, the other people's expressions became a little strange. Judging from this situation, the phantoms did not seem to be a big threat to the person inside. And as the number of phantoms decreased, they could also see that the person sitting inside was a woman. Among the 18 people who had entered the minor 5 elements Chaos Wonderland, there were only 3 women. Coincidentally, these 3 women belonged to 3 different parties. This also meant that the person inside was definitely not from Zhuge party. At this time, Wu Diao had an idea. From the fluctuation of spiritual power of Delta Origi, he sensed that she was at the middle stage of Spirit Aperture Realm, which was the same as the women in his group. Therefore, he was sure that the person trapped inside was definitely one of his people. Wu Diao's attitude immediately changed and he said, now that the number of phantoms has decreased greatly, I think it's time for us to make a move. However, Shi Feiying wasn't willing to do that. Once she rescued them, Wu Diao's forces would become even more powerful. She wouldn't do something like helping her enemy. Zhuge remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking. Wu Diao looked at Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi said indifferently, there's no rush. Since that person was able to hold on until now, he must have some ability. Let's wait and see. Wu Diao suddenly snorted. However, Lung Shichi and the others' reaction was within his expectations. He muttered, if you guys don't make a move, I'll make a move myself. The reason why he wanted to join forces with Lung Shiqi and Zhuge was just to conserve his spiritual power. One had to know that they were still in a gravity that was dozens of times higher than normal. They had to consume spiritual power at every moment to resist the gravity. Naturally, they had to conserve as much spiritual power as possible. Since Lung Shiqi and the others refused to make a move, Wu Diao had to ask the two people beside him to do it themselves. With a flash of spiritual light, a heavy hammer appeared in Wu Diao's hand. It was an extremely rare spiritual weapon. Just as he was about to save the person, a person stopped him. It was Lung Shiqi. Wu Diao's face immediately darkened. "Brother Lu, what do you mean by this?" I said, "Let's wait and see." Lung Shiqi still said in a very flat tone, but his tone was full of unquestionable. His tone immediately irritated Wu Diao, but Wu Diao did not get angry. Instead, he said in a low voice, "Lu Xingji, what do you want to do?" "I don't want to repeat the same words for the third time." Don't think that you're so great just because you've killed a person in the gang spirit realm. Wang Zhu Mu Qinglin. Wu Diao shouted in a low voice. Wang Zhu and the other person moved quickly. The three people instantly surrounded Lung Shiqi. With a zung, Dichuan unsheathed his spirit sword and pointed it at Wang Zhu. The two sides instantly drew their swords. Zhuge and Shi Feiying looked at each other and quietly took 2 steps back. They looked like they were going to watch the tigers fight. Wu Diao saw that Lung Shiqi was not backing down, and saw that Zhuge was watching the show. For a moment, he was in a difficult position. The main reason was that he was not confident that he could defeat Lung Shiqi. Even if he cultivated an earth attribute cultivation method, and had some home ground advantage, he was not confident. The situation was in a deadlock. However, a sudden phenomenon broke the stalemate. Suddenly, a raging ghost fire suddenly rose into the air. It was clearly fire, but it made the surroundings gloomy and terrifying as if they had fallen into hell. Lung Shiqi and the others, who were still opposing each other, immediately retreated. Lung Shiqi raised his hand and released layers of cold air to block the ghost fire. At the same time, he used his supercilious eyes to investigate what was happening. What he saw gave him a fright. It turned out that the Delta Origi had gathered all the remaining ghosts at the same time. Under the cover of the ghost fire, the huge skull appeared again and swallowed all the ghosts. Chapter 473. The sudden change caused Lung Shiqi, Wu Diao, and the others to stop what they were doing. The appearance of the willow. The wisp also caused Wu Diao's expression to turn ugly. This was because the girl in his group cultivated a gold attribute cultivation method. It was impossible for her to use such a strange flame. This also meant that the person inside was definitely Lung Shiqi's group's blood moon. From this, it could be seen that Lung Shiqi already knew about this. But why didn't Lung Shiqi save his own people? There must be something fishy about this. Wu Diao originally didn't have the confidence to defeat Lung Shiqi and Dichuan. If the other side had one more person, then Lung Shiqi's group would really be invincible. He definitely couldn't let this happen. On the other side, Zhuge had been silently observing. He finally realized that Delta Origi was actually using Ghost Shadow to increase their cultivation. This method was simply appalling, but Zhuge didn't care about this. His thoughts were the same as Wu Diao's. They couldn't let Lung Shiqi's group become stronger. Thus, Zhuge didn't hesitate to make a move. His spirit sword was unsheathed. In a split second, starlight shone like a dream as it attacked the ghost fire. Wu Diao's movements weren't slow either. The heavy hammer in his hand suddenly smashed into the ground. The stairs undulated up and down like a wave, sweeping over with terrifying spirit energy. Shi Feiying, Wang Zhu, and Mu Qinglin also made a move together, intending to kill Delta Origi. Scram! Lung Shiqi suddenly let out a low roar, and a small crystal bug suddenly flew out. Soon after, the bug bloomed with a brilliant light, covering Lung Shiqi's blood beast armor with a layer of multicolored flowing clothes. At the same time, a jade-like blood pattern appeared on Lung Shiqi's forehead. It was the blood mark of serenity. Under the buff of the Gu King's possession, and the blood mark of serenity, Lung Shiqi's spirit pressure directly soared to the 8th or 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. It was also at this time that Di Chuan finally made his move. The Tier 6 spirit sword in his hand actually split into two, becoming a red and a black double sword. Di Chuan swung his swords, and a destructive and bloody sword intent swept out. His target was Wang Zhu. Wang Zhu's cultivation was the lowest among the few people present. This was the so-called pick the soft persimmon. Wang Zhu also sighed inwardly and had no choice but to fight with Di Chuan. Wu Diao couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Even without Wang Zhu, there are still 4 late-stage spirit aperture realm experts attacking at the same time. How can you deal with them alone? However, what Wu Diao did not expect was that in this incomparably gloomy chaotic region, there would suddenly be a dazzling rain of petals. He subconsciously looked up and saw countless colorful petals falling from the sky, like a goddess scattering flowers. It was so dazzling that even Wu Diao himself was almost immersed in it. Wu Diao hurriedly bit his tongue to wake up. He was secretly shocked. When did these colorful petals appear? And when did they almost make him fall into it? What made him even more shocked was that Leng Shiqi, who was clearly standing next to him, had disappeared without a trace. He turned his head again and found that other than Zhuge Puha, who was still clear-headed, Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin's eyes were somewhat dull. It was obvious that they had fallen into an illusion. No matter what, they were still late-stage spirit aperture realm experts. How was it possible that they were instantly pulled into an illusion? A few days ago, Leng Shiqi was indeed unable to do this. However, after refining many spirit stones, his mental strength had skyrocketed, and he had already condensed a primordial spirit. His mental strength had a qualitative leap, and he was already able to instantly trap several late-stage spirit aperture realm cultivators. Immediately after, the petals that filled the sky suddenly spun rapidly and shot out triple extinction sword chi. In an instant, the tyrannical sword chi that covered the sky and covered the sun descended. Moreover, these sword chis were both real and fake, real and illusory at the same time, making it impossible to guard against. Wu Diao hurriedly put away his heavy hammer. He raised his arms and propped up a golden semicircular shield. The endless triple extinction sword chi clanged against the shield, but it only caused the shield to twist a little, but it did not break. Looking carefully, in fact, the sword chi did not actually hit the shield. Instead, they were bounced off before they even made contact. Zhuge Puha held his spirit sword and once again drew a simple array out of thin air. The stars in the array shone brightly, emitting starlight power that constantly wore down the triple extinction sword chi. The two of them woke up early and had a way to resist, but Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin did not have it so easy. The two of them only woke up when they were injured by the triple extinction sword chi. Fortunately, they were already prepared to resist the powerful gravity, so they were not seriously injured. As for Di Chuan and Wang Zhu, they had already retreated far away when they saw that the situation was not good. While Wu Diao and the others were busy defending against the thousands upon thousands of triple extinction sword chis, for Leng Shiqi suddenly appeared behind them. The 4 Leng Shiqi all stabbed out with their swords. Blood blossomed and the murderous aura was ferocious. The 7 swords overlapped and the power was terrifying. The 4 of them had different reactions to Leng Shiqi's sudden attack. Leng Shiqi grunted as the gravity around him increased several times, causing Leng Shiqi's sword light to twist strangely. It was even on the verge of dispersing. Zhuge Puha's expression did not change. He pointed with his left hand, and traces of starlight condensed into an unknown star beast. The star beast shook its head and swung its tail, knocking away the Leng Shiqi's sword chi. Shi Feiying condensed several layers of thick crimson ice crystals around her, and Mu Qinglin threw out a handful of seeds. Those seeds grew into thick trees in the blink of an eye, blocking the Leng Shiqi's attack. These people were not easy to deal with. Although Leng Shiqi temporarily suppressed the 4 of them, it was difficult for him to defeat them. In fact, Leng Shiqi was also having a headache. The gravity here was still affecting him too much. Otherwise, he could have divided into hundreds of phantoms. Of course, if there was no gravity here, his opponents would not be at a disadvantage so easily. However, Leng Shiqi's goal was not to win. He only needed to delay the 4 of them for a while, and wait for the Delta Origi to finish absorbing the power of the ghost shadow. Hence, Lung Shiqi retracted his apparition. A pair of fleshy wings appeared on his back, and he soared into the air. However, he only flew a few feet high. He quickly formed hand seals, and 5 different formations slowly took shape in midair. Jugapuha and the other 4 had just barely resisted the tri-extinction sword chi. When they looked up, their expressions turned bitter. Although they did not know what Lung Shiqi was going to do, just seeing Lung Shiqi in an invincible position was enough to give them a headache. The ability to fly was a standard for Sky Origin Realm cultivators. Lung Shiqi looked down at them coldly. The 5 formations were slowly rotating, and countless light spots were constantly condensing. Waves of spiritual energy that made people's hearts palpitate were being emitted. Everyone who was still standing on the stairs was shocked. They all knew that Lung Shiqi was strong, but they never thought he would be this strong. Chapter 474. Lung Shiqi floated in the air. With a wave of his hand, the dense dots of light in the formation behind him became brighter and brighter, making him look like a god. The people below were surprised, but at the same time, they felt bitter in their hearts. Wu Diao could only shout with a gloomy face, "Brother Lu, there is no need to be so serious. We only heard that Brother Lu's strength is outstanding, and wanted to learn a thing or two from you." His words meant that he was admitting defeat. Wu Diao naturally had his own trump cards, but they had only reached the 50th step of the stairway. There were still many unknown dangers ahead. If they used their trump cards now, what would they do in the future? Jugapuha's thoughts were similar to Wu Diao's, but the shock in his heart was far greater than Wu Diao's. He had fought with Lung Shiqi before. At that time, Lung Shiqi did not use the 2 moves just now. This made Jugapuha feel that Lung Shiqi was simply unfathomable. Jugapuha also stopped. Lung Shiqi saw this and felt a little relieved. He had achieved his goal. He changed the seal in his hand and the various colored dots of light gradually dimmed. However, he did not withdraw the ice and fire-flowing light array. Instead, he continued to let the 5 arrays slowly rotate to deter everyone. Seeing that Lung Shiqi did not continue, everyone let out a sigh of relief. The pressure and shock that Lung Shiqi gave them just now was too great. Especially Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin. They still could not believe that the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm could be so strong. Dichuan also had a look of surprise. After all, he was not present when Lung Shiqi killed Jiwen. No matter how strong Lung Shiqi was from others, it was not as good as seeing it with his own eyes. Dichuan was a little scared. He believed that his strength was at most a little weaker than Jugapuha. But Lung Shiqi could easily suppress 4 late-stage Spirit Aperture realm experts. If it was a one-on-one fight, who could be his opponent? Of course, Dichuan was also a little relieved. He was glad that he stood on Lung Shiqi's side. As long as he held on to this thigh, he might be able to pass this test. Since the main battlefield had stopped fighting, Dichuan did not continue fighting with Wang Zhu. Both sides stopped. Lung Shiqi continued to float in the air and looked towards the Delta Origi. Without any disturbance, the Delta Origi's process seemed to be going smoothly. Through the Byakugan, he could see that the Delta Origi's cultivation was still rapidly rising. At this moment, it had reached the same level as Lung, the 5th level of the Spirit Aperture realm. However, Lung Shiqi was not very happy, because he knew that this kind of rapid increase in spiritual energy was too heterogeneous. It could easily lead to an unstable foundation and ruin one's future path of cultivation. Seeing that the Delta Origi's cultivation was still increasing, Lung Shiqi's eyes could not help but show some worry. Just as the Delta Origi broke through to the 6th level of the Spirit Aperture realm, the ghost fire around her suddenly shrunk. The ghost fire was completely retracted into the Delta Origi's body, and everyone finally saw the appearance of the Delta Origi. At this moment, the Delta Origi's originally black hair had turned gray. The Delta Origi slowly opened her eyes. What was even more strange was that her eyes were completely empty. There was no distinction between the white of her eyes and the pupils. Her eyes were completely gray. Lung Shiqi immediately frowned. There was indeed a problem with the method of using external forces to increase one's cultivation. The Delta Origi expressionlessly glanced at everyone. In the next moment, a sinister blood-red color suddenly flashed in her eyes. She screamed, And immediately, dozens of blood-red ghosts of various shapes swarmed out from her body and madly pounced on everyone. Every single one of these blood-red ghosts actually had the terrifying strength of someone who had just entered the spirit aperture realm. Fortunately, these blood-red ghosts did not have any intelligence. The few of them hurriedly used various methods to defeat most of them. However, behind the Delta Origi, there was a skeleton phantom that was dozens of feet tall and covered in bits of flesh. The skeleton phantom raised its head to look at the sky and raised its arms high, as if it was sincerely praying. Everyone also raised their heads to look, but they were shocked to see that there was a blood moon in the sky. A bloody, gloomy, and terrifying aura spread out, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed with a green light. He discovered that the spiritual energy in the Delta Origi's body was extremely unstable. This was probably because she had devoured too many ghosts, and some dark emotions had affected her mind, causing her to become so crazy. To put it simply, she was possessed by the devil. Looking at the skeleton and the blood moon in the sky, Lung Shiqi was also very dignified. Facing this blood moon, he actually felt like he was facing a spirit astral realm expert. Delta Origi, who was only at the 6th level of the spirit aperture realm, actually had such strength. However, Lung Shiqi thought that this blood moon should be Delta Origi's strongest trump card. It must be the kind of ultimate move that could not be used easily. Therefore, whether it was to protect himself or to let the Delta Origi conserve their strength, he had to stop the Delta Origi. The green light in Lung Shiqi's eyes instantly turned into a 5-colored stream of light, and an invisible spiritual energy crazily surged out. 5 God's Spirit Intimidation Technique. Lung Shiqi directly invaded the Delta Origi's spiritual world. The Delta Origi was now in a state of chi deviation, so he easily broke in. In the Delta Origi's spiritual world, there was scarlet blood everywhere. On the ground, there were bones after bones. In the air, there were countless ghosts flying around, and above the dome, there was a huge blood moon. It could be said that the Delta Origi's spiritual world was a mess. If this continued, it would not be far from collapse. However, he could not find the Delta Origi's spiritual consciousness. However, there was no time for him to slowly search. The blood moon in the outside world could fall at any time. At that time, the Delta Origi would definitely overdraw their spiritual energy, and coupled with chi deviation, the consequences would be unimaginable. With a thought, Lung Shiqi transformed into 5 giants that were about 100 feet tall. With a raise of his hand, he crushed a large number of ghosts. The phantoms immediately rushed over in groups. There were too many phantoms. It was as if there was no end to them. Even the 5 Lung 17's feet were piled up with phantoms' corpses. Some of them were even useless. Lung Shiqi knew that he could not continue like this. At the same time he used the 5 God's Spirit Intimidation Technique, he also used falling flowers. Gorgeous flowers suddenly appeared. Those flowers did not attack the ghosts, but floated around in the spiritual world. Lung Shiqi wanted to use this method to find the Delta Origi's spiritual consciousness first. As long as he could awaken the Delta Origi's spiritual consciousness, it would be half the battle. Not long after, Lung Shiqi indeed sensed the Delta Origi's aura at the edge of the spiritual world. Found it. It hid so well. However, when Lung Shiqi arrived and was about to awaken the Delta Origi, the entire spiritual world suddenly trembled. Chapter 475. The violent tremors even caused Lung Shiqi's 5 phantoms to show signs of collapsing. He said in shock, "Not good, is this place going to collapse?" At this moment, the blood moon hanging high in the sky suddenly bloomed with a boundless blood-red brilliance. Wherever the brilliance touched, all the ghostly figures were completely vaporized. Not only the phantoms, but the flowers and Lung Shiqi's phantoms were also evaporated. Lung Shiqi saw this scene and chuckled. It seems that Delta Origi's consciousness has awakened on its own, and is subconsciously clearing out the other worldlings in its spiritual world. That saved me some effort. Then he removed the 5 God's soul intimidation technique. In the outside world, Delta Origi's originally empty eyes gradually regained their spirit. The gray and blood-red light in her eyes also slowly faded away, along with the blood moon that she summoned. Delta Origi's eyes finally regained their clarity. She first looked around with some confusion, then her gaze kept changing. Finally, her gaze fell on Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi also removed the ice and fire-flowing light formation, and the Gu King's spirit armor, and landed on the ground. He had a lot of questions about Delta Origi, but now wasn't a good time to discuss them. Lung Shiqi stood together with Delta Origi and Di Chuan, which gave the other two great pressure. Especially the blood moon that Delta Origi used, it wasn't much weaker than Lung Shiqi's. Together with Di Chuan, who was at the 9th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm, and had a 6th level Spirit Sword, who could be their opponent? Wu Diao and Zhuge secretly exchanged glances, and saw the intention of forming an alliance in each other's eyes. Zhuge looked at Delta Origi and asked with a smile, "How did Lady Bloodmoon come here directly? Please enlighten me." His question was also a question that everyone, including Lung Shiqi, wanted to know. After all, they entered the stairway to heaven together, but before that, Delta Origi was already here. Perhaps Delta Origi knew some secrets about the stairway to heaven. Delta Origi still had a cold expression, and didn't say anything. Zhuge smile slightly stiffened. At this time, Delta Origi finally spoke. "I don't know. In my impression, this place was originally a ruined palace. The color was the same as this stairway. When I was exploring the palace, I accidentally triggered some traps or formations, and was surrounded by a large group of ghosts. When I woke up, I was already in this state." Her answer clearly didn't satisfy the others. She didn't say, she didn't know what she said. Of her, of course, to the point, it was as if she didn't say anything. However, if she didn't want to say anything, no one could force her. They could only continue to move forward with many questions. When Gu San and Lung Shiqi passed each other, Gu San secretly handed over a jade slip to Lung Shiqi, who took the hint and put it away. When everyone reached the 52nd step, the gravity on their bodies didn't become stronger. This was good news, but there was also bad news. The air was filled with a blazing hot aura. Fortunately, this aura wasn't very strong. It was directly blocked by their protective spiritual armor, but this wasn't a good sign. From the moment they entered the stairway to heaven, the gravity gradually became stronger. This made them realize that the higher they went, the hotter it would become. What made everyone feel a little strange was that no monsters appeared on the 52nd step. At this time, Delta Origi explained, "The monsters on the stairs nearby are those ghosts. They are all dead now." Her short sentence made everyone speechless. They also recalled the scene of hundreds of ghosts howling from before. At the same time, they became more and more afraid of Delta Origi. Surrounded by hundreds of ghosts, not only did she kill them all, but she also took the opportunity to improve her cultivation. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. However, when everyone thought about it, without the monsters blocking the way, their progress would only be smoother. It wasn't bad. Only Lung Shiqi was still thinking about the soul stone. He also felt a little strange. There were so many ghosts, but they didn't drop any soul stones. He thought about how Delta Origi absorbed the power of the ghosts to improve her cultivation. It was possible that she had also absorbed the soul stone. Without the monsters blocking them, everyone moved very quickly. Lung Shiqi originally cultivated cold energy. He constantly released waves of cold energy to wrap the three of them. Shi Feiying's strange crimson ice crystal was also a variant of the ice element. It was also very useful for resisting the omnipresent blazing aura. Wang Zhu cultivated a water element cultivation method, so she could handle it with ease. Thus, everyone quickly arrived at the 101st step. Standing here, everyone looked around with unusual vigilance. From their previous experience, they were afraid that there would be new changes from here onwards. Sure enough, 4 golden armored warriors appeared on the stairs, each over 10 feet tall. Without saying a word, they attacked. Every golden armored warrior had the terrifying strength of the 4th layer of the Spirit Aperture Realm. At the same time, there seemed to be something strange in the air. Every time they breathed, they would feel a piercing pain in their body, as if they were being pricked by sharp needles. "These are the monsters that appeared in the metal area," Wu Diao shouted. He had first appeared in the metal area, so he was very familiar with these golden armored warriors. The strength of this golden armored warrior was already a threat to them. In terms of cultivation, none of the people present were weak. But don't forget that they had to endure dozens of times the gravity, the intense heat, and the pain of being pricked by needles. Their strength had been greatly restricted. Just relying on the strength of a single group to deal with these 4 golden armored warriors was already quite troublesome. Thus, this time, everyone decided to attack together without any discussion. The 8 middle and late-stage Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators did not hesitate and attacked at the same time. Every one of them knew that there was still a long way to go before they reached the top of the stairway. Now was not the time for them to kill each other. With the 8 of them working together, it did not take long for the golden armored warriors to be torn into pieces. As for the dropped soul stones, they were equally divided. However, no one was happy at all. According to the rules of the stairway, these 4 golden armored warriors were definitely the weakest. Thus, the opponents they would face next would definitely be stronger and stronger. Sure enough, at the 102nd step, the number of golden armored warriors increased to 5. With every step, the number of golden armored warriors would increase by 1. When it reached 10, the number of golden armored warriors decreased back to 4. However, the golden armored warriors were now comparable to the 5th layer of the Spirit Aperture Realm. If this continued, wouldn't the golden armored warriors be as strong as the late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm when they reached the 140 to 150 level? The danger was not only limited to the golden armored warriors. There were also more and more invisible needles hidden in the air. Even the protective armor could not completely block them. Everyone was enduring endless pain at every moment. How should they fight? Chapter 476. But even so, no one chose to back down. They were all clear that if they wanted to pass the test and have a meteoric rise, they had to face the difficulties head-on. At this time, the 8 of them temporarily gave up on the idea of fighting among themselves, and chose to work together to face the enemy. Just like that, they arrived at the 150th step with great difficulty. With a wong sound, a golden light flashed and 10 huge golden armored warriors appeared with different weapons. These golden armored warriors all had the strength of the 7th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. However, the 8 of them, including Lung Shiqi, were already panting. After a series of battles, they had consumed a lot of their spiritual energy, but they couldn't stop to rest because even if they didn't fight, they still had to resist the gravity, fire, and invisible golden needles, so they could only end the battle quickly. Lung Shiqi swallowed a pill to recover his spiritual energy, but even so, his face was still slightly pale. Delta Origi was the same. The disadvantages of him and Delta Origi were also revealed. Even though they were all very strong, Lung Shiqi could even be said to be the strongest among them, but he was still at the 5th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. In terms of strength, he didn't lose to anyone, but the total amount of spiritual energy he had was still far from the late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Such a long battle made Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi the first to be unable to bear it. Their situation naturally fell into the eyes of the others. Wu Diao and Jugapuha were secretly happy. Of course, facing the 10 golden armored warriors in front of them who were comparable to the 7th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm, they couldn't be happy too early. Up until now, they had already killed many golden armored warriors, so they knew their weaknesses. Soon after, Gusen took a step forward. Strange Willow. The wisps ignited, instantly enveloping all the golden armored warriors. Fire was the bane of metal. Among the people present, only Gusan had cultivated fire elemental spiritual techniques. Although her cultivation was not as high as the golden armored warriors, her willow. The wisps were also extraordinary. Thus, she was the first to strike and restrain the golden armored warrior. Lung Shiqi raised his arms, and hundreds of cold threads floated out, wrapping around all the golden armored warriors like tentacles. The cold threads seemed very weak, but they were able to bind them tightly. Furthermore, there was a terrifying cold underworld force that was constantly corroding the golden armored warriors' bodies. This was the netherworld Thousand Silk Hands. The Delta Origi and Lung Shiqi greatly suppressed the movements of the golden armored warriors. Then they immediately attacked in groups of 2 or 3. The 7 stars on Jugapuha's spirit sword shone brightly, and every stab of the sword could easily leave a hole on the golden-armored warrior's body. Wu Diao swung his heavy hammer. It was as if the heavy hammer was weightless in his hand. He fought the golden-armored warrior in close combat with the power of earth. Di Chuan was able to use 2 different spiritual techniques with his dual swords. His approach was similar to Leng Shiqi's swordsmanship. They both focused on controlling blood energy and killing intent. The difference was that Di Chuan's swordsmanship was very flexible. He was fighting 2 golden-armored warriors alone, and still had the upper hand. The others also used their own methods. Overall, they still had the upper hand. However, everyone's spiritual power was already greatly depleted. It was obviously very difficult to eliminate the golden-armored warriors in a short period of time. This would probably be a long battle. However, in this way, the Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi would only be at a greater disadvantage. Even if they defeated all the golden-armored warriors, they would not be able to use much of their combat power. Therefore, this battle must end as soon as possible. Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and the Demon Advent battle blade appeared in his hand. The moment the battle blade appeared, it trembled excitedly, as if it was very eager to fight. It could be seen that the Demon Advent battle blade's spirituality was higher. Leng Shiqi held the Demon Advent battle blade tightly, and then a terrifying demonic aura soared into the sky. Dense demonic patterns climbed onto the blade, and the Demon Advent battle blade immediately buzzed excitedly. When the others saw that Leng Shiqi was about to make a big move, they all had different expressions. A strange expression quickly flashed across Jugapuha's face. This was because he had been defeated by Leng Shiqi's sword earlier. As for the others, they were all staring at the Demon Advent battle blade in Leng Shiqi's hand in surprise. That sword seemed to have a high spirituality, and it was very likely to be a rank 7 artifact. This was a treasure that they could only dream of. Leng Shiqi was still concentrating on compressing the demonic aura in his body. The originally scattered demonic aura also began to shrink back, and all of it went into the Demon Advent battle blade. At this moment, even Leng Shiqi's eyes were completely filled with pure demonic aura. Slash! A low roar sounded, and a shocking sword intent suddenly appeared. A faint shadow of a demon god appeared, and the demon god raised its hand and slashed out. A pitch-black sword light flashed, and the gray fog that was everywhere in the sky was suddenly swept away. 3 large golden heads rolled on the ground, and even the stairway to heaven shook a few times. The sword light only flashed for a moment, but the suffocating power caused the corners of everyone's eyes to twitch violently. Demon Ephemeral Epiphyllum. This was the true Demon Ephemeral Epiphyllum. Previously, when Leng Shiqi fought with Jugapuha, Demon Ephemeral Epiphyllum was just a sword technique that he had created on the spur of the moment. It could be said that it was only in its embryonic form. Now that Leng Shiqi had condensed a primordial spirit, he had integrated his primordial spirit's will into the sword technique. Somehow, it had actually caused the demon god's shadow to appear, and even he himself was a little surprised. If Leng Shiqi himself was a little surprised, then the others could be said to be extremely shocked. Previously, when Leng Shiqi suppressed 4 Spirit Aperture Realm late-stage cultivators by himself, he had also shown his powerful strength. However, at that time, no one had used their full strength, so they were only afraid of Leng Shiqi. But now, everyone's spiritual power had been used up by more than half, and Leng Shiqi was still able to use such a terrifying sword technique, killing 3 golden-armored warriors with a single strike. Everyone present had their own powerful trump cards, but they were very clear that even if they used their trump cards, they would not be able to kill 3 golden-armored warriors with extremely strong defense at the same time. In comparison, they were not only afraid of Leng Shiqi, they were even more terrified. Among these people, the one who was the most shocked was Jugapuha. He had once lost to the Demon Ephemeral Epiphyllum sword technique, but he was confident that if he used his strongest spiritual technique, he would definitely be able to turn the tables. However, after seeing the Demon Ephemeral Epiphyllum, the confidence in the bottom of his heart was completely destroyed. He had a complicated look in his eyes as he thought to himself. So when he fought with me, he did not use his full strength at all. If it was me facing that sword, would I really be able to block it? The demon ephemeral epiphyllum made everyone's fear of Lung Shiqi rise to an unprecedented level. Chapter 477. Some people were afraid, while others were happy. Di Chuan was the happiest person. The stronger Lung Shiqi was, the higher his chances of passing the test. What's more, Lung Shiqi had pulled all the aggro to him, so no one cared about Di Chuan anymore. If no one paid attention, of course he wouldn't be targeted, and he was happy. As for Delta Origi, she looked deeply at Lung Shiqi, and stubbornness flashed in the depths of her eyes. Lung Shiqi killed 3 golden armored warriors with one slash, shocking everyone, but he didn't have it easy either. At this moment, he only had about 30% of his spiritual power left, and all of his demonic energy was used up, which meant that he couldn't use demonic energy for a while. He directly took 3 pills to recover his spiritual power, and after that he didn't do much, only using the cold underworld thousand silk hands to restrict the golden armored warriors. With 3 golden armored warriors gone, the pressure on the others was greatly reduced. Except for Lung Shiqi, everyone was dealing with a golden armored warrior alone. The golden armored warriors weren't weak, and their defense was strong, but after all, they weren't intelligent enough. How could they be a match for these battle-hardened young elites in a one-on-one fight? In less than a quarter of an hour, all of the golden armored warriors were killed. Everyone quickly divided the dropped soul stones, and then didn't dare to stop at all, and stepped onto the 151st step. They were already 2/3 of the way up the stairway, and if nothing unexpected happened, there would be additional restrictions on the stairway. So far, only the cold air in the water area and the spiritual power in the wood area hadn't leaked out, so it would definitely be one of these 2 next. After the 8 people stood still, they were vigilant and carefully sensing for any changes. The blazing aura that originally wrapped around them suddenly disappeared, and turned into a bone-piercing cold air. Fortunately, everyone was already vigilant and didn't panic too much. Lung Shiqi withdrew the cold air, and drew a circle in front of him with his finger. Suddenly, a circle of fire appeared, surrounding him, Delta Origi, and Di Chuan to resist the cold air. However, what caught everyone off guard was that the cold air suddenly disappeared, and then waves of fire rushed towards them. This sudden change really made everyone a little flustered. The power of ice and fire here actually alternated with each other without any pattern, making it impossible to guard against. To make matters worse, 2 huge ice giants jumped out from the gray fog. The aura emitted by these monsters was also at the 7th layer of the spirit aperture realm. The wave of fire did not seem to have any effect on the ice giants. What was more troublesome was that these 2 monsters were obviously more intelligent than the golden armored warriors. They directly chose to pounce on the Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi, who had the lowest cultivation. "You're courting death." Delta Origi's evil aura surged. She gently twirled the bone sword in her hand, and a raging ghost fire ignited on the blade. With a thrust of the sword, dozens of ghost fire sword beams formed a sword net, instantly injuring the ice crystal giant that was pouncing towards her. Lung Shiqi was much simpler. He directly summoned the Goo King to fight with the ice crystal giant, while he waited for an opportunity to move. He turned to the others and said, "What, you guys want to stand by and watch?" Zhuge Puha really wanted Lung Shiqi to die here, but it was obviously not the time for them to fight. He hesitated for a moment, but still stepped in to help. At this time, Wu Diao seemed to have come back to his senses. He brought Wang Zhu and Mu Qinglin to join the battle. With the 8 people attacking together, it was naturally easy to deal with the 2 ice crystal giants at the 7th layer of the spirit aperture realm, but the atmosphere was unusually heavy. This was only the first wave, and there were already monsters at the 7th layer of the spirit aperture realm. How strong would the monsters be in the end? Could there be monsters at the spirit astral realm? Even if there was no spirit astral realm, a group of monsters at the 9th layer of the spirit aperture realm was not something they could deal with. In addition, the power of ice and fire outside without any pattern made them very uncomfortable. Coupled with the gravity and invisible golden needles, it would be good if they could use half of their strength. At this moment, even some people's confidence began to waver. Could they really reach the top? Leng Shiqi didn't have the time to think about it. He only knew that the more time he wasted here, the less hope he had of getting out. Therefore, he resolutely walked to the next step. Delta Origi and Dichuan followed closely behind. 3 ice crystal giants appeared, and another battle began. Battle, battle, battle. There was no adjustment, no rest, only battle after battle awaited them. The ice crystal giants were getting stronger and stronger. Everyone was forced to use some of their trump cards. For example, at the 162nd step, Mu Qinglin summoned a huge ancient tree that was 10 feet tall, and directly threw several ice crystal giants down the stairs. Wu Diao was inspired, and also used the anti-gravity that he had been hiding for a long time, and sent a group of monsters flying. Although they couldn't get soul stones like this, compared to reaching the top, the soul stones were nothing. Dichuan used some kind of secret technique to control a doppelganger. That doppelganger wasn't a simple illusion technique, but an existence that was similar to a physical body. His main body and doppelganger each wielded a sword, and used completely different sword techniques. Miraculously, when these 2 sword techniques were used together, they were able to erupt with extremely powerful battle strength. He killed several ice crystal giants that were comparable to Spirit Aperture Realm 8th layer cultivators by himself. In fact, ever since he entered the Sky Stairway, although Dichuan's cultivation was very high, he didn't have a strong presence. His limelight was almost completely stolen by Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi. He suddenly erupted with such powerful strength, which made people look at him in a new light. As for Wang Zhu and Shi Feiying, who weren't very strong and didn't have powerful secret techniques, the 2 of them had to bear the pain and use their trump cards. Wang Zhu used a palm-sized purple compass. The compass could release dense lightning, and its power was boundless. Shi Feiying, on the other hand, used a blood-red crystal. The crystal rapidly grew in size, and was filled with a strange power of extreme frost. It actually froze the monster, which was originally made of ice crystals, into ice. In order to conserve spirit energy, Leng Shiqi also used a few consumables. These were all obtained from the resources of the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold, so he didn't feel any heartache when using them. This was a battle that seemed to be endless. Gradually, everyone's consciousness became a bit blurry. They only knew that they had to fight blindly. When they reached the 200th step, their spirit energy had almost reached the bottom. Even their protective spirit armors couldn't be maintained. Although they still had pills, the continuous use of pills had greatly reduced the effects of the pills. Their spirit energy still couldn't make up for their consumption. At the same time, whether it was the power of gravity, ice or fire, they were all constantly destroying their bodies. At this moment, everyone was carrying injuries of various sizes. Only Leng Shiqi's body wasn't weak, so his situation was slightly better. However, at this moment, 10 huge ice crystal giants appeared. These monsters all had terrifying auras comparable to Spirit Aperture Realm 9th layer cultivators. Chapter 478. The 10 powerful ice crystal giants glared at everyone. There was even a hint of mockery in their eyes. It was obvious that their intelligence was close to that of a normal person. Ka ka ka. The ice crystal giants roared towards the sky and let out a strange ear-piercing roar. Soon after, a visible wave of cold air swept over. Leng Shiqi's left hand drew a flame with the fire symbol technique, while his right hand shot out Xiaoyang sword qi with the sword. Only then was he able to block the cold wave. Delta Origi had the ghost fire protecting their bodies, and Dichuan was in a good state. They could all block it. However, there was someone who couldn't block it. That person was Wang Zhu. Wang Zhu was at the 7th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm, but his strength was inferior to Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi, so he could be considered the weakest person here. At this moment, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. The spirit armor on his body was shaking and could shatter at any moment. Once the spirit armor disappeared, the ice crystal giants wouldn't even need to do anything. Just the strange things in the outside world were enough to take his life. Facing the cold wave, he knew that he was doomed. He looked hopefully at Wu Diao, hoping that Wu Diao could save him. However, Wu Diao could only protect himself. How could he care about him? Wu Diao directly chose to ignore him. Wang Zhu's face was filled with despair. He was already beginning to regret. If he had known earlier, he would have gone back the way he came like Buyangqiu. At least he would have had a chance to live. But now, even if he wanted to go down, it was too late. The cold wave attacked, and the little bit of protective spirit armor he had left was finally completely shattered. Without the protection of the spirit armor, the gravity that was dozens of times stronger instantly crushed Wang Zhu to the ground. The qi of ice and fire and the invisible golden needles destroyed his body without any resistance. In the blink of an eye, his aura was extremely weak. He was like a candle flickering in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment. The sad thing was that the other 7 people didn't even look at him, because the 10 ice crystal giants had already charged over. Leng Shiqi raised his hands to the sky. Suddenly, a glaring sun of poisonous flames appeared. The burning air seemed to distort a little. The shining sun poisonous yang palm brazenly smashed towards the charging ice giant. Boom! The golden poisonous flames wreaked havoc, accompanied by the ice crystal giant's ear-piercing roar. Leng Shiqi's shining sun poisonous yang palm blasted off half of the ice giant's body. However, the ice giant didn't seem to feel any pain. It continued to drag its heavy body forward. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath. If he was at his peak, this would not be the only result. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only wield the inky jade sword and unleash a mighty swordlight to fight with the ice crystal giant. As the saying goes, misfortunes never come singly. There were 10 ice crystal giants in the field, but only 7 people. Therefore, there was bound to be someone who had to deal with more than one ice crystal giant at the same time. Just as Leng Shiqi was engaged in a fierce battle, another ice crystal giant actually found him. Leng Shiqi cursed his bad luck. In his current state, he could barely gain the upper hand in a one-on-one fight. However, if it was 1 against 2, he could only passively take a beating. More importantly, his strongest explosive spiritual technique, ephemeral flash, could not be used. A large part of the reason why ephemeral flash was so strong was that it could invisibly attack the mind. However, the ice crystal giants clearly did not have complete intelligence, so this technique had little effect on them. As for ephemeral flash, he had already used it once before. The demonic aura in his body was almost exhausted, so he could not use it anymore. Even lust for the eyes was also an illusion, so it was useless against the ice crystal giants. Seeing the other ice crystal giant charging over, Leng Shiqi could only stretch out his 5 fingers. 5 blood-red lightning bolts shot out, carrying a rich blood and thunder power. They all shot into the ice crystal giant's right leg. Puff puff puff. The ice crystal giant's right leg was directly penetrated with 5 transparent holes, which suddenly made its body stop. At the same time, the ice crystal giant with only half of its body left had already arrived in front of Leng Shiqi. A dark golden brilliance suddenly erupted, and a palm print as heavy as 10,000 kilograms appeared, fiercely colliding with the ice crystal giant. A terrifying wave of air came out from the place where the two collided, and the floor tiles on the stairs were all shattered and sent flying out. Their fight was very loud, but the others did not pay attention to it. Everyone had to concentrate on the battle. If they were distracted, they would die. This was the first time Leng Shiqi had taken the attack of the ice crystal giant head-on. The strength of this monster was 2 points higher than he had imagined. In terms of strength alone, it was probably comparable to a spirit cultivator, who had just entered the gang spirit realm. The Supreme Yang secret palm print was a spiritual technique with both offensive and defensive capabilities, but it was still broken by the ice crystal giant's punch. However, the ice crystal giant was not in a good condition either. Its entire right arm was broken, and now its upper body was only left with its head. The threat was finally greatly reduced. Leng Shiqi used 2 spiritual techniques in succession, and most of his remaining spiritual power was taken away. Looking at another ice crystal giant rushing over, Leng Shiqi had no choice but to take out a piece of finger bone. This finger bone was neither human nor beast. It was the thing that Dichuan took out when he traded the crystallization pill with him. Dichuan had also studied the finger bone for a period of time, but he had no clue. After this thing was in Leng Shiqi's hands, he found some clues. The evil aura on the finger bone was very similar to the aura of the evil old man he met in Translation City. He had also cultivated the old man's spiritual technique, Evil Sky Morning Mantra, and could also use a trace of evil aura. So Lung Shiqi accidentally found that this finger bone contained an extremely powerful evil spirit. If he could draw it out, it would definitely be comparable to the full blow of a master of Gang's spirit realm. Lung Shiqi quickly glanced at the others. In addition to him, Wu Diao was also fighting with 2 ice crystal giants at the same time and had been injured. The other 5 people were also not in a good condition. Delta Origi's fighting power was not weak, but her cultivation was not very stable. She could not use her spiritual power very smoothly during the battle, so she could only defend herself at the moment. Di Chuan's situation was a little better, but they were only evenly matched. As for the rest, except for Zhu Gepu who had a slight advantage, Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin were even seriously injured and dying. If it went on like this, it would not be long before people died. For Lung Shiqi, as long as Delta Origi was fine, the others could die. But if someone died, who would deal with the extra ice crystal giants? At that time, they would only die faster. So Lung Shiqi no longer hesitated. He mobilized the weak evil spirit in his body and poured it into the finger bone. In an instant, the evil spirit rose and whistled in the air, condensing into a strange shadow. The shadow only had the upper body, with a beast head and a human body. It had 6 arms, each of which was different. The mysterious shadow's hollow eyes turned gently twice, and then the 6 arms waved together, stirring up the heaven and earth, and fell down with a strange evil spirit. Chapter 479. Everyone get out of the way. Lung Shiqi roared and retreated to the edge of the stairs using the ghost steps. The others felt a chill down their spines when they saw the evil Qi. At first, they didn't dare to be distracted, but when they heard Lung Shiqi's voice, they all ran away as fast as they could. In the blink of an eye, the 6 arms of the evil Qi shadow were like 6 pillars supporting the sky, carrying the power to shake the earth and shatter the void. The terrifying power directly shattered the stairs. Some of the ice giants were instantly shattered into powder, and some fell down. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Everyone was stunned. Even Lung Shiqi was the same. Even he didn't expect the power in the finger bone to be so powerful. Those ice giants comparable to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm were like toys that could be destroyed at will. However, what caused Lung Shiqi's heart to race was that the evil energy phantom hadn't disappeared yet. It actually lowered its head to look at Lung Shiqi, and its originally empty eyes actually revealed a trace of killing intent. Lung Shiqi's heart suddenly jumped to his throat. His spiritual power was almost exhausted. If the evil Qi shadow attacked him, he would definitely die. Fortunately, the evil Qi shadow suddenly disappeared. Perhaps the power in the finger bone had been exhausted, but the look in its eyes still made Lung Shiqi's heart palpitate. He thought of the second time he caught the evil old man's remnant soul. The remnant soul had threatened him, saying that if he was found by his original body, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Could it be that the mysterious shadow just now was the original body of the remnant soul? However, now was not the time for him to be distracted and think too much, because everyone else was looking at him with a strange expression. Everyone could reach this level, who didn't have something to protect themselves. But almost everyone had used their treasures, but the power of the mysterious shadow released by Lung Shiqi was far beyond the power of a spirit cultivator, who had just entered the spirit astral realm. Did he still have such a terrible trump card? At the same time, they were secretly glad that Lung Shiqi had already used this trump card. Otherwise, if this thing was used on them, none of them would have survived. Even though Lung Shiqi had given them too many surprises, they still found it unbelievable. Could it be that Lung Shiqi still had other trump cards? No one could say for sure. If it was said that they were afraid of Lung Shiqi at the beginning, now the Lung Shiqi gave them a feeling of invincibility. Only Delta Orgi remained calm. She knew Lung Shiqi the best, and knew that he must have some trump cards up his sleeve. Lung Shiqi didn't care about other people's gazes, nor did he care about what they were thinking. He looked around, and then his face fell. Wang Zhu had already disappeared. He didn't know if she had died in the hands of the evil shadow or if she had fallen down. No matter which one it was, Wang Zhu was already on the verge of death. She must have fallen by now. What Leng Shiqi cared about was the soul stones on Wang Zhu's body. If Wang Zhu could come to the stairway, it meant that she must have some soul stones. Besides, along the way, he had received a lot of soul stones. A conservative estimate was at least 20 to 30 pounds. It was gone just like that. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. Although it was a pity, they still had to continue walking. Then, the 7 of them went around the edge of the stairway, and finally stepped onto the 201st step. Although everyone was already riddled with injuries and gasping for breath, they immediately made preparations to continue fighting once they reached this level. Especially since everyone knew that from here onwards, there would definitely be new restrictions and new monsters. However, after a full 10 breaths, everything was still calm as usual. Nothing unexpected happened. This made everyone puzzled. Only Leng Shiqi and Delta Orgi knew what was going on. Since entering the stairway, the characteristics of the earth, fire, metal, and water areas had appeared. Only the wood area hadn't. So from here onwards, their spiritual power would begin to slowly drain away. However, the speed of the loss of spiritual power was still very slow. If they didn't pay too much attention, they wouldn't feel anything. Leng Shiqi sighed secretly. This situation was simply one disaster after another for them who already had little spiritual power left. Especially Delta Orgi, her cultivation was not very stable. If she stayed here for a long time, it was possible that her realm would directly fall. Among the people present, only Leng Shiqi and Delta Orgi had stayed in the wood area before. The others were still wondering why nothing strange had appeared. Leng Shiqi said, "If I'm not wrong, this corresponds to the wood area. Our spiritual power will involuntarily leak and lose. It will be lost forever. It may be difficult for you to understand now, but the higher we go, the faster the loss of spiritual power will definitely be." The reason why he said this was mainly because of what Di Chuan said. Moreover, as long as they continued, everyone would notice it sooner or later. There was no need to hide it. Zhuge Puha immediately closed his eyes and carefully checked his spiritual power. After a few breaths, he suddenly opened his eyes and said, "It's true. My spiritual power is indeed disappearing, but the speed is very slow. If you don't look carefully, you won't notice it at all." Wu Diao also felt it. His face suddenly became very bitter. Big loss, big loss. His cultivation was already at the peak of the spirit aperture realm. After completing the first round of the task, he also chose the crystallization pill. As long as he left here, he could retreat to break through to the gang spirit realm. He looked at the sky. If he wanted to reach the top of the stairway, there were at least dozens of stairs. Obviously, it couldn't be climbed in a short time. He didn't know how much spiritual power he would lose. This also meant that the time for him to break through to the gang spirit realm would be greatly delayed. Not only Wu Diao, no one was willing to let their cultivation regress. Now they wanted to leave the small 5 elements chaos cave as soon as possible. "Hey, we've been here for a while. Why haven't there been any monsters?" Shi Feiying asked curiously. Her question was also what the others were thinking. Everyone looked at Leng Shiqi at the same time. Leng Shiqi didn't hide anything and briefly explained the situation in the wood area. Shi Feiying's face lit up and said, "That is to say, there may be no monsters on the next dozens of stairs? That's much easier. Even if we lose part of our spiritual power, it's better than dying in the mouths of monsters." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi couldn't help but ponder. In the wood area, there were indeed no monsters, but there seemed to be a trap formation there, which made it difficult for people to walk out of the wood area. But now they were all on the stairway. As long as they went up, the trap formation didn't have much effect. If this was the case, the next dozens of stairs should be the easiest. But would it really be so simple? Chapter 480. It's easy for you to say, but how could it be so easy for us? Wu Diao immediately refuted Shi Feiying. He couldn't accept the fact that his cultivation had fallen, and his temper had become irritable. Shi Feiying snorted and was about to speak, but was stopped by Zhuge Puha. We'll know what's going on after we go up. Why waste your breath here? You'll only be wasting your spiritual energy. Big brother Zhuge is the wisest. Shi Feiying didn't forget to compliment him. Leng Shiqi secretly nodded at Delta Origi and Di Chuan, then continued forward. 1 level, 2 levels. The group didn't encounter any monsters when they reached the 230th level, but the spiritual energy in their bodies was being drained faster and faster. In addition, they could faintly see the end of the stairway. Everyone used the last of their spiritual energy and went up as fast as they could. However, Delta Origi, who was beside Leng Shiqi, paused for a moment. Then her aura sank, and her cultivation fell from the 6th level of the spirit aperture realm to the 5th level. The others saw this and worked even harder. No one was willing to fall in cultivation. The fall in cultivation made Delta Origi's body even weaker. Leng Shiqi was about to support her, but Delta Origi suddenly glared at him. Leng Shiqi smiled bitterly. She's still so eager to be strong. However, he saw that Delta Origi wasn't slow, so he didn't force her. He maintained the same speed as Delta Origi. Soon, the 7 of them finally reached the last level of the stairway. The process was very smooth, so smooth that it made them feel like they were in a dream. The last level was larger than the previous one, and there were 5 doors of light shining with different colors at the edge. Seeing these doors of light, everyone's eyes lit up. This should be the exit. Seeing the exit in front of them, some people couldn't help but become excited. As long as they could leave here, regardless of whether they could pass the test or not, they could at least save their lives. Leng Shiqi activated his Byakugan and stared at the 5 light doors. Then his expression suddenly tensed up. He quickly signaled Delta Origi and Di Chuan to quietly take a few steps back. The other 4 people's attention was attracted by the light door, so they didn't notice their actions. All of a sudden, the 5 doors of light emitted different rays of light, and 5 incomparably thick pillars of light soared into the sky. The 5 pillars of light converged in the sky, but strangely enough, they did not show any colors when they intersected. Instead, they reinforced and restrained each other, evolving into a large mass of gray light. Just as they were wondering what was going on, the gray ball of light suddenly shrunk and expanded, and a huge black sphere appeared from within. The moment the black ball appeared, an invisible force was emitted. That force was invisible and untouchable, but it felt like a mountain was pressing down on them. Everyone was forced to retreat. Even Mu Qinglin was bleeding from the corner of her mouth. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi and the other 2 had retreated in advance, so the pressure on them was slightly less. The black sphere slowly fell. This thing's volume had completely exceeded the area of the stairs. If it really fell, everyone here would die without a burial place. Everyone finally understood that they couldn't easily leave here. The black sphere didn't have anything special about it. It just released an invisible pressure that was enough to suppress everything. Facing the black sphere, everyone felt a sense of powerlessness in their hearts. This was the truth. This black sphere was so huge. How could they stop it? More importantly, they had no way out at this moment. Because once the black sphere fell, the entire stairway would probably collapse in an instant, so they had no way to retreat. Since that was the case, there was only one way left, and that was to fight with their lives. At this moment, there was no need for any words. The 7 of them knew very well what to do. Zhuge Puha took the lead. He took out a 5th-level spiritual sword and pointed it in the air, outlining a mysterious starry sky map. Then he shattered his spiritual sword. The fragments turned into stars in the starry sky map, and condensed into a sword-shaped constellation. He formed a seal with his hands and the whole starry sky suddenly dimmed. All the starlight gathered on Zhuge Puha's body, making him extremely bright. And his cultivation aura continued to rise. In an instant, it surpassed the peak of the spirit aperture realm, and reached the level of the spirit gang realm. Of course, he only had the spiritual power of the spirit gang realm, but he didn't have the spirit gang. Even so, his means were terrifying enough. Wu Diao didn't see the change in Zhuge Puha. He had already closed his eyes. If one looked carefully, they would find that he wasn't breathing. He had already focused all of his attention, and even his breathing had changed to internal breathing, for fear of being affected in the slightest. Thump, a very subtle sound was heard. It sounded a bit like a heartbeat. Strangely, the sound came from the ground under his feet. Thump. Thump. The sound of the heartbeat became louder and louder, and the ground around him rippled like the surface of a lake. It was as if the earth had a life of its own. Shi Feiying directly burned her essence blood. Her crimson ice crystal turned completely blood red, blooming with enchanting ice crystal flowers. Mu Qinglin formed a seal with one hand. The skin all over his body quickly darkened and wrinkled. At first glance, it looked very similar to the bark of an old tree, but the feeling he gave was like a towering ancient tree in a landslide, not afraid of anything. Dichuan growled and tore his clothes. Complex and strange patterns were engraved on his front and back. Those patterns lit up one after another, and an ancient and wild aura was emitted. Blood chi rose behind the Delta Origi. A ferocious skeleton appeared in the blood chi. The skeleton piously prayed to the sky, and a blood moon quietly appeared. Lung Shiqi looked at these people, and thought that they were still hiding something. Those who could reach this step could not be underestimated. He was not in a hurry to make a move, because he had encountered the same problem as when he fought the ice crystal giant. The effect of divine ephemeral epiphyllum was not great, and demonic ephemeral epiphyllum was temporarily unusable. He looked at the slowly falling black sphere, and then looked at the 5 light gates that represented the power of the 5 elements. He thought to himself, the black sphere seems to be formed from the fusion of the power of the 5 elements. The 5 elements have always been in harmony with each other, and there are no flaws. Then what can break the 5 elements? When the heavens and earth were created, the 5 elements were fixed. But before the heavens and earth were created, there was only chaos in the world. What was it that created the heavens and earth? Thoughts constantly flashed through Lung Shiqi's mind. He seemed to have grasped a trace of inspiration, and his eyes became clearer and clearer. At this moment, his primordial spirit actually left his body, and he once again saw countless threads of different colors in this world. These threads were as thin as hair, but there were also a few threads that were as thick as an arm. These threads only had 2 colors, black and white. Chapter 481. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was enlightened, and an indescribable feeling filled his whole body. His primordial spirit could only leave his body for a few seconds, so he quickly retracted his primordial spirit into his spiritual sea. Then he opened his mouth and swallowed a blood spirit pill, burning his essence blood in exchange for a large amount of spiritual power. He clenched his fists, and his eyes shone with black and white light. Lung Shiqi's right fist was blooming with the ultimate power of light, purifying everything. Great Brightness Fist. His left fist was surging with demonic chi, condensing into black lotuses that eroded everything. Black Lotus Demon Fist. These 2 fist techniques were both level 6 spiritual skills. One was one of the rewards he got after destroying Extreme Fire Village, and the other was bought from the system store not long ago. Lung Shiqi used 2 level 6 spiritual skills at the same time, which was simply impossible in the eyes of others. First of all, level 6 spiritual skills were the standard for Gang Spirit Realm experts. Only the geniuses of various forces were qualified and capable of practicing level 6 spiritual skills at the spiritual aperture realm. For example, among the several people present, Delta Origi, Zhugapuha, and Wu Diao were all preparing to use level 6 spiritual skills. Therefore, people who could practice and use level 6 spiritual skills at the spiritual aperture realm were absolutely rare. Not to mention using 2 level 6 spiritual skills at the same time. Even a Gang Spirit Realm expert would find it difficult to do so. Lung Shiqi, on the other hand, had already cultivated 2 spiritual techniques to the great perfection realm with his unlimited skill points. He was able to use them with ease. In addition, he had been deriving spiritual techniques for many years, so he often used 2 or even more spiritual techniques at the same time. Therefore, there was this scene in front of them. But Lung Shiqi was not satisfied with this. What he wanted was not to use Great Brightness Fist and Black Lotus Demon Fist at the same time, but to combine the 2 level 6 spiritual skills together. The way he thought of to resist the Black Sphere was to break the 5 elements with Yin and Yang. At the beginning of the world, yin and yang were first divided, and then the 5 elements were determined. To break the black sphere condensed by the 5 elements, only the power of yin and yang could do so. The Great Light Fist was the authentic power of yang, while the Black Lotus Demonic Fist was a demonic technique that corresponded to the power of yang. Of course, these two spiritual techniques could not purely represent yin and yang, but they contain the power of yin and yang respectively. As long as the Great Light Fist and the Black Lotus Demonic Fist could be combined, it would be possible to defeat the Black Sphere. This was Lung Shiqi's last resort. Now he could only stake it all on one throw. Black and white light swirled above Lung Shiqi's head. In the blink of an eye, a pure white swastika and a black lotus made of devil chi appeared. Both of them exuded terrifying spiritual power. Lung Shiqi tried to get them closer, but the two began to repel each other as soon as they got a little closer. The spiritual energy in Lung Shiqi's body suddenly became chaotic, and he almost lost control. It was definitely not easy to fuse two completely opposite level 6 spiritual skills in a battle. In fact, it was practically impossible. If word got out, people would think that Lung Shiqi was dreaming. At the same time, the black sphere crushed down, and the terrifying spiritual pressure made everyone's faces pale. Even breathing became difficult. Zhuge Puha was still the first to make a move. His spiritual sword was already broken, but it was only a level 5 spiritual sword. At this time he took out his trump card, the Merak Star Painting Sword. He pointed his sword, and a ray of starlight shone in all directions. In an instant, the sky changed color. The gray sky instantly turned into a sky full of stars. The countless stars in the sky were all swords. The sword rays were like a meteor shower, and for a moment, the power was amazing. However, all the starlight sword rays were annihilated before they could even get close to the black sphere. Bright red blood flowed out of the corner of Zhuge Puha's eyes. Not only was he exhausted of spiritual energy, but he was also unwilling to accept that his strongest spiritual technique could not do anything to the black sphere. Suddenly, Wu Diao's roar rang in his ears. Earth pulse. Zhuge Puha looked at Wu Diao from the corner of his eyes. At this time, Wu Diao's body was very strange. He was clearly standing there, but he gave people a feeling that he could not see clearly. It was as if he had become one with the space. With his roar, everyone could clearly hear the sound of a heart beating violently. In fact, it was not the heart beating, but the earth shaking. Plop! A thick dark yellow brilliance burst out from the ground and rushed straight to the black sphere. The strange thing was that this yellow brilliance did not seem to have any offensive power. It only had the characteristic of anti-gravity. Before this, Wu Diao had also used the anti-gravity spiritual technique once, but compared to the current one, it was simply a child in the presence of an adult. Under the effect of his anti-gravity, the yellow brilliance slowed down the black sphere's falling speed. In Zhuge Puha's starry sky, the black sphere was like a black hole that was constantly absorbing the starlight sword rays. At this time, something else suddenly appeared in the starry sky. It was a crescent blood moon. The blood moon flickered, as if it had its own breathing. Under Gu San's control, it flew to the top of the black sphere, bringing with it a boundless blood aura as it slashed down. The blood moon fell from the sky, and a terrifying bloodlust erupted, capable of breaking mountains and rivers. Di Chuan leapt high into the air like a human cannonball. The black and red sword rays were vast and mighty, layer upon layer, dazzling everyone. Mu Qinglin transformed into an ancient tree and rose from the ground. Her branches were like sharp spears, and Shi Feiying's body was surrounded by crimson snowflakes. She was bewitching and beautiful. They did not hesitate to use their strongest spiritual techniques. Working together, they really did temporarily stop the black sphere's falling momentum. However, this was not a long-term plan. If even one of them could not hold on, it would be equivalent to wasting all their previous efforts. Therefore, they all looked at Lung Shiqi at the same time. Ever since they entered the stairway to heaven, Lung Shiqi had given them too many surprises and surprises. Perhaps he still had something up his sleeve. In fact, Lung Shiqi, who was using the Great Light Fist and Black Lotus Demonic Fist at the same time, was about to collapse. The spiritual spirals in his body were spinning to the extreme. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the black sphere. At this moment, an idea flashed through his mind. He loosened his fists a little, and the swastika and the black lotus of devil chi immediately began to dissipate. However, they did not disappear. Instead, they turned into streaks of black and white light that spread out like a waterfall. Lung Shiqi's mind moved. The black and white light intertwined and rotated. Not long after, it formed a black and white vortex behind him. He had simulated the fist force of the Great Light Fist and Black Lotus Demonic Fist into the shape of a spiritual spiral. As soon as the black and white spiritual spirals formed, they caused a disturbance in heaven and earth. The entire space shook inexplicably. Both the stairway to heaven and the black sphere trembled. Lung Shiqi was secretly happy. His idea was right. Immediately, he focused all his attention on controlling the black and white spiritual spirals to spin slowly. They spun faster and faster, even stirring up the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and stirring up the wind and clouds. They directly devoured all the spiritual energy within a few miles. Suddenly, a hole appeared in the center of the spiritual spirals. As they spun faster, the hole became bigger and bigger. Immediately after, a black and white ball drilled out of the hole. As soon as the black and white sphere appeared, the entire minor chaos of 5 elements suddenly shook. The 5 elements area, the stairway to heaven, the black sphere, and the spiritual techniques of the other people were constantly shaking and twisting. The star maps were destroyed, the blood moon dissipated, the ancient trees withered, and the ice crystals melted in this world. Yin and yang were reversed, and the 5 elements were reversed. Everything was in chaos. The source of all this was the black and white sphere formed by Lung Shiqi. Everyone's spiritual techniques were forcibly interrupted, and some of them even suffered from the backlash of their spiritual techniques. They all looked at Lung Shiqi in horror. This time, what amazing method did he use? However, Lung Shiqi did not know what was going on at all. All his divine thoughts were used to control the black and white sphere. Even his 5 senses were withdrawn. He knew best how terrifying the black and white sphere was. If he was distracted, even if there was a slight mistake, he would be the first to die. At this moment, there was only the black sphere in the sky in his eyes. He wanted to crush it. Chapter 482. Lung Shiqi couldn't help but roar. He used all his strength to force himself to bleed from his 7 orifices, but he didn't notice it. Buzz. The black and white sphere finally shot out of the spiritual spiral and headed straight for the black sphere. Suddenly, time and space stopped and the sky darkened. Everything seemed to be still, but the black and white sphere instantly crossed the space and collided with the black sphere. This was the tit-for-tat confrontation between the power of yin and yang and the power of the 5 elements. However, the strange thing was that after the 2 spheres collided, there was no explosion or loud noise as everyone expected. There was only a black and white light that covered the sky and the sun. The light flowed in all directions as if they were watching a silent fireworks show. Although no one knew what was going on, when the light dissipated, they all saw that the black sphere no longer existed. That was enough. Finally, they had survived another disaster. Pfft! Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin spat out blood one after another. Both of them had used secret techniques that overdrew their bodies. Now that the crisis was over, they couldn't hold on any longer. Zhuge Puha knelt on one knee, large beads of sweat dripping down. Wu Diao sat on the ground, panting desperately. Delta Origi was also weak. Her beautiful face had long become abnormally pale. Her body was also swaying, as if she could be blown away by the wind. Di Chuan's body was obviously more shriveled than before. He was using 2 long swords to support himself. As for Lung Shiqi, he was still motionless. In fact, he couldn't move even if he wanted to. He was so weak that he couldn't even move. What they didn't know was that in the entire 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven, the 6 areas were all in a mess. The originally separated 5 elements areas were in a mess, and when the elements collided with each other, it caused a series of explosions. Gradually, the 5 elements in this space became chaotic. The chaotic area was also collapsing. The stairway that everyone was on began to shake, and at the same time, The various restrictions that had been imposed on them all this time disappeared. It wouldn't be long before this small space completely collapsed. Feeling that the stairway was shaking slightly, everyone's expression changed. There was no time to lose. It was better to leave this place as soon as possible. However, to their despair, they didn't know when, but the 5 light doors that originally stood at the edge of the space had disappeared. Without an exit, how were they supposed to get out? They couldn't help but despair. Lung Shiqi used his last bit of mental strength to control the Goo King to fly out. The Goo King flew to his face and opened its mouth to spit out a ball of green spiritual energy. This was one of the Goo King's abilities, Devouring Soul. Devouring Spirit could not only devour the opponent's spiritual power, but it could also return a part of it. The spiritual power it spat out just now was devoured by Lung Shiqi when he was fighting with Jiwon. This was Lung Shiqi's last trump card. As the spiritual energy entered his body, Lung Shiqi felt as if the earth was being nourished by the rain after a great drought. He looked inside himself and found that the Goo King's spiritual power was equivalent to about 10% of his own spiritual power. Although it was very little, it was extremely precious in this situation. Rumble. The stones on the stairway continued to crack and fall. They were standing at the highest point. If one of the lower levels completely broke, they would fall down as well. Looking down, it was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. If they really fell, they would be smashed to pieces. Lung Shiqi had the Goo King and the ability to fly. He wasn't afraid of falling, but what about the others? He used the ghostly spring steps and instantly came to the side of Delta Origi. He didn't care about the lives of others, as long as Delta Origi could survive. Delta Origi was already extremely weak. Under the continuous tremors, she almost fainted. Lung Shiqi gently hugged her, and then a pair of colorful wings stretched out from his back as he prepared to fly down. "Brother Lu, wait a moment!" Dichuan suddenly shouted, causing Lung Shiqi's movements to slightly pause. Dichuan hurriedly said, "Brother Lu, take me down with you. All the soul stones I have are yours. I can give them to you now." After saying that, he took out all the soul stones in front of him. At a rough glance, there were about 30 to 40 kilograms. Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly. With a wave of his hand, he put all the soul stones into his mustard seed bracelet. Seeing this, Dichuan grinned. He had made a deal with Lung Shiqi before. He knew that Lung Shiqi was a person who valued profits, so he decisively decided to pay to avoid disaster. From the results, he made the right choice. As for why Lung Shiqi took away Blood Moon for free, in Dichuan's opinion, it was nothing more than taking a fancy to Blood Moon and wanting to be the hero to save the damsel in distress. Lung Shiqi's wings flapped gently, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Dichuan and grabbed his arm. Without the influence of gravity, Lung Shiqi wouldn't have any problems even if he carried 2 people. Immediately, he spread his wings and was about to fly away, but the others didn't want to wait for death here. Wu Diao immediately stretched out his hand and shouted, Don't go. I can also give you the soul stones. No, I can give you all my resources. Take me down." Speaking of this, his face showed a pained expression. However, Lung Shiqi didn't even look at him. He had already flown away with Delta Origi and Dichuan, leaving behind only scattered streams of light. Wu Diao stretched out his hands in the wind. Zhuge Pu and the other 3 were also a little desperate. There were more and more cracks on the ground of the stairway to heaven. It wouldn't be long before they fell down. Zhuge Pu's face was stained with blood, and the jade crown on his head had long disappeared. He no longer looked like an elegant gentleman. "I didn't expect to fall to my death here. I'd rather die in battle." Thinking of this, he felt a strong sense of unwillingness in his heart. Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin were extremely weak and powerless. They could only lie on the ground and wait for death to come. On the other side, Lung Shiqi landed on the ground with the other 2. Although the ground was shaking violently, it didn't split open. They were safe for now. Lung Shiqi put down the 2 and immediately looked around. However, he didn't see Buyangqiu's figure. He felt a little strange. Buyangqiu should have come down a long time ago. Where did he run off to now? "Brother D, please take care of Blood Moon. I have to go up again." Dichuan's feet were on the ground, and he felt a lot more at ease. He hurriedly nodded and said, "Brother Lu, don't worry." Leng Shiqi immediately spread his wings and flew up. He turned into a 5-colored stream of light and rushed into the sky. At this time, large amounts of rocks were falling from the stairway to heaven. It clearly couldn't hold on for much longer. When he flew back to the top, his figure was like a savior in the eyes of Wu Diao and the other three. Even Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying, who were prepared to die, had a strong desire to live in their eyes. Leng Shiqi said straightforwardly, "I can only take 2 people down. Use money to buy lives. The highest bidder wins." He was actually holding an auction here, and he was auctioning lives. Zhuge Puha didn't say anything and directly threw over his mustard seed bracelet. This meant that he was willing to use all of his belongings to exchange for his own life. Leng Shiqi lightly weighed the mustard seed bracelet. Just from its appearance, this mustard seed bracelet was much more exquisite than his own. He sent his mental power into it. There were all kinds of resources inside. Just the soul stones alone were more than 60 kilograms. He nodded in satisfaction. Zhuge Puha also secretly sighed in relief. He walked to Leng Shiqi's side. At this time, Wu Diao was holding his mustard seed bracelet. He had a conflicted expression. He loved money by nature, but in the face of life and death, he still knew what to do. He reluctantly handed over his mustard seed bracelet. Chapter 483. After Leng Shiqi took the mustard seed bag, he looked at Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin. The desire to live that had just risen in the two's heart was quickly extinguished, because they knew that they definitely couldn't compete with Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha for resources. Therefore they all remained silent. Who would have thought that Leng Shiqi would say, "It's not impossible to bring 2 more." Whoosh! Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying's gazes instantly turned, their eyes flashing with indescribable excitement. "Bring me along, I can give you anything you want." Shi Feiying's red lips let out a sweet voice, causing one's heart to surge. The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth rose slightly. "Give all the resources to me. In addition, I'm also very interested in that special ice crystal secret technique of yours." But Shi Feiying subconsciously wanted to refuse. That was her family's secret technique that could not be passed down, and could not be leaked. But all of a sudden, a third of the ground on the top floor shattered and fell down. Shi Feiying instantly swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She gritted her teeth and said, "Fine. Very good. Mu Qinglin, what about you?" Leng Shiqi turned to Mu Qinglin with a smile. Mu Qinglin bitterly smiled. Now that things had come to this, he had no choice. He helplessly said, "I'll listen to Brother Lu." Then, Leng Shiqi took their mustard seed bracelets and various mysterious secret techniques, waved his hand, and sent out a few rays of light that swept everyone up and flew away. At the same time, in the city lord's mansion in the outside world, Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan were watching everything that happened in the minor chaos paradise through a secret technique. From the beginning, people began to die continuously. Anyone who could pass the first round of tests could definitely be called a rare genius in 100 years, but their expressions were completely unmoved. They were like high and mighty gods who had cut off their 7 emotions and 6 desires, coldly watching the struggles of the mortals. Just like that, they watched as everyone gradually gathered from various regions to the chaos region. There, they fought with all kinds of strange creatures and even killed each other. Just like that, they watched as the last few people climbed up the stairway to heaven. They watched as Leng Shiqi and the others fell into battle after battle. They watched as Buyangqiu gave up and Wang Zhu died. Even when the crowd reached the end, the 2 of them were still expressionless. However, when Leng Shiqi combined the Great Brightness Fist and the Black Lotus Demonic Fist to simulate the spiritual spiral, Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan's jaws dropped in shock. For these 2 people who had been in high positions for a long time, unless something big had happened, it was impossible for them to reveal such an expression. This was because they could no longer see anything in the minor chaos paradise. However, in reality, the sky had indeed collapsed. It was the minor 5 elements chaos paradise that had collapsed. Kacha, kacha! A few cracks suddenly appeared on the bracelet that maintained the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Lei Mayan immediately let out a groan as blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. The minor 5 elements chaos paradise was an imitation of the continent's most mysterious 5 elements chaos paradise. Even if it was an imitation, it was enough to become the most important treasure of the Thunderblaze dynasty. In this small secret realm, one could be more in tune with the heaven and earth. It would also be easier to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. Normally, only those spirit cultivators who had made great contributions to the unity of heaven and man realm were qualified to enter and cultivate. And those monsters in the secret realm were nothing to experts of the unity of heaven and man realm. They could completely ignore them. This time, Lei Mayan came to host the elite meeting with a very special mission. This mission was related to the stability of the Thunderblaze dynasty in a few years. The current emperor should not be able to hold on for more than a few years. The various princes had already begun to fight openly and secretly. No matter if it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, many people had secretly sought refuge with their masters. Even the 4 great punishment envoys and the 4 great general managers had people standing on their side. But in the end, no matter who ascended the throne, they would definitely carry out a large-scale purge of the people from the other factions. At that time, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards would lose a large number of experts and talents. The change of imperial power would definitely attract the attention of the various large spirit cultivator sections. It would also attract the attention of the other 2 great dynasties. In order for the new emperor to be able to sit steadily on the throne, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards could not be lost. Thus, this year's elite meeting was also used to select the geniuses who could become the 4 great general managers, or the 4 great punishment envoys. Thus, she had the authority to bring out the minor 5 elements chaos paradise as a testing ground. Right now, although the Lung Shichi and the others were only at the spirit aperture realm, when they came out, they would have the opportunity to enter the Thunderblaze dynasty's dragon vein to cultivate. Their cultivation would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. In a few more years, they would have the chance to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm. But she never would have thought that the minor 5 elements chaos paradise would suddenly collapse. Although she and eunuch Gao could see the scene in the secret realm, they could not hear the sound, nor could they feel the aura inside. Thus, they did not know what the people inside had done to cause such a thing to happen. They only saw Lung Shichi condensing the black and white spiritual spirals, and it seemed that something was about to come out of them. But after that, it was just a blur. After that, the black sphere was defeated and turned into a ray of light. It was also at this moment that the minor 5 elements chaos paradise began to collapse. Lei Mayan had used her own strength to open the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Now that the secret realm had collapsed, she naturally suffered a backlash and suffered some internal injuries. However, she did not care about her injuries. She only wanted to know why the secret realm had collapsed. This secret realm could be considered a treasure that the Thunderblaze dynasty valued greatly, but it had been indirectly destroyed in her hands. Even if she held a high position, she could not escape the blame. But even though she was experienced and knowledgeable, she could not figure out the reason. Eunuch Gao's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Princess, let's release those people first. If they all die inside, we won't be able to account for it." Only then did Lei Mayan come back to her senses. She also shuddered. If the few people inside died, causing the elite assembly to become a joke, then she would have seriously neglected her duty. In addition to the crime of losing the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, she might not be able to keep her position as the punishment envoy. Lei Mayan's face was gloomy. Taking advantage of the fact that the secret realm had not completely collapsed, she sent dozens of seals into the secret realm. At the same time, after Lung Shichi brought the few people to the ground, he was also thinking about how to get out with a frown. Seeing that the heavens were collapsing and the earth was cracking, they were all arrows at the end of their flight, with less than 10% of their combat strength left. More importantly, they did not even know where to run. At this moment, 7 streams of light suddenly appeared in the air, enveloping them. Before the few of them could react, their figures had already disappeared. After Lei Mayan brought the few people out, she immediately withdrew the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. The secret realm returned to its original appearance, looking like a very ordinary bracelet. However, this bracelet was now covered with cracks, as if it would completely shatter with just a light shake. Lei Mayan put away the bracelet with heartache. In her heart, she still had some expectations of repairing the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. After the few people appeared out of thin air in the city lord's mansion, they quickly knew that they were saved. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The feeling of escaping death several times was something that ordinary people could not understand. Chapter 484. Leng Shiqi's gaze swept around, but he still didn't see Bu Yangqiu. Since Lei Mayan had taken action to bring them out, there was no reason for anyone to be left behind. From the looks of it, Bu Yangqiu had really died by accident. Eunuch Gao looked at the heavily injured and weak 7 people and said, "Go back and recuperate. Come back here in 3 days." Logically speaking, it should be announced that the 5 people passed the test, but they didn't dare to disobey Eunuch Gao's orders and left. Before leaving, Leng Shiqi gave Delta Orgi a look, indicating that she should rest well. After returning to his room, he immediately released dozens of goo worms as a warning, and checked the situation in his body. Many of his meridians and spirit veins were damaged. This was caused by him forcefully overdrafting his spirit energy. At the same time, there were many medicinal dregs left in his meridians. These were left behind by him swallowing all kinds of pills without any hesitation. If he couldn't get rid of these dregs in time, it would leave behind hidden dangers in his cultivation, and cause his cultivation speed to slow down. Apart from this, the most serious thing was the loss of essence blood. Leng Shiqi had maintained the blood mark of serenity for a long time, and even swallowed a blood spirit pill. The essence blood in his body was almost burnt out. His spirit energy and mental strength could be recovered in a short time, but his essence blood would take a long time to recover. This meant that his battle strength would decrease for a period of time. Fortunately, he didn't suffer any serious injuries. Compared to the others, he was still in a good condition. After checking his condition, he took out 4 mustard seed bracelets and placed them in front of him. These were naturally the mustard seed bracelets of Zhugepu and the other 4. If one were to talk about what Leng Shiqi gained from the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, it would be condensing a primordial spirit and the resources in front of him. Actually, when he first brought Delta Orgi down, he could have taken everyone with him. The reason why he didn't pay attention to Wu Diao and the others was to make them feel despair. Only then would they hand over all their resources without hesitation. The 4 of them were all Spirit Aperture Realm geniuses who were either inspectors or commissioners. The wealth they possessed was definitely beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Walala! Leng Shiqi poured out all the items in the 4 bracelets, occupying more than half of the room. Seeing so many resources, even he himself was a little surprised. However, on second thought, those people had also destroyed second-rate sects before. They must have plundered a lot of resources from those sects, so he was relieved. Then he sorted all the resources into categories. Spirit tools, pills, materials, rare treasures. It could be said that he had struck gold. First, he sold all the items that he had no use for to the system. His profit was considerable, and he now had more than 5,600 system coins on him. And Leng Shiqi cared about 3 things the most. 2 of them were cultivation methods and spiritual techniques, namely the limitless deadwood incantation and the crimson ice crystal technique. This was what Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying had handed over. The limitless deadwood incantation allowed him to transform into a dead tree with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Not only did it have powerful defensive capabilities, but it could also transform into a giant tree to attack. The crimson ice crystal technique was a very rare ice cultivation method. Its rank was not low, but to cultivate this cultivation method, one had to use their own blood as nourishment to refine the ice crystal. It turned out that the crimson color was actually condensed from fresh blood. Leng Shiqi was very satisfied with these cultivation methods and spiritual techniques. Apart from these, What he was most satisfied with were the soul stones. Of the 7 people who had survived to the end in the minor chaos paradise, apart from Delta Origi, all the soul stones of the others were with him. Counting them carefully, he actually had as many as 300 caddies of soul stones. If he could refine 300 caddies of soul stones, how much would his spiritual power increase? Lung Shiqi felt a little excited just thinking about it. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that Delta Origi had secretly given him a jade slip. After that, they had gone through endless battles and had no time to look at the contents. He took out the jade slip and moved his spiritual power. A wave of information was reflected in his mind, which made him secretly shocked. It turned out that these soul stones really did have souls. In fact, the source of power of the monsters that appeared in the minor chaos paradise was the soul stones. And the soul stones were refined using a secret method to imprison the soul of a spirit cultivator. Spiritual power originally came from the soul. No wonder refining soul stones can increase spiritual power. Lung Shiqi looked at the pile of large and small soul stones in front of him. There were at least a few hundred of them. How many spirit cultivators' souls had been refined? Even though Lung Shiqi's hands were stained with blood, he still shuddered when he knew about this. Refining the soul meant that even the chance of reincarnation was cut off. And Delta Origi's jade slip also came with a chant. Using this chant to refine the soul stones, not only could it increase one's spiritual power, it could also be converted into spiritual power. It turned out that after Delta Origi absorbed those ghost shadows, they did not drop any soul stones. They were directly refined by her, and because of this, she was able to continuously increase her cultivation. From this, it could be seen that this chant was not an ordinary item. He did not know where Delta Origi obtained it from. However, Lung Shiqi's gaze became fervent. If he used this chant to refine the soul stones, his cultivation could also increase rapidly. However, he did not intend to overly rely on refining the soul stones to increase his cultivation. In the end, it was still an external object. The spiritual power obtained from external objects was not pure. Just like how Delta Origi's cultivation fell due to unstable cultivation at the end, Lung Shiqi experienced a similar thing when he broke through to the spirit aperture realm in the Gu God sect. He used a few months to consolidate his cultivation and laid a good foundation. Thus, after thinking for a while, he divided the 300 gene soul stones into 4 parts. He left 100 gene for himself to refine, and 100 gene for Jiuli. He planned to give the 50 gene to Delta Origi. It was not that he was unwilling to give more, but that Delta Origi had already refined many soul stones and knew that it was a double-edged sword. Even if he gave more, Delta Origi might not accept it. As for the last 50 gene, he still had a great use for it. After organizing all the resources, Lung Shiqi began to recover his spiritual power and mental power. After about 4 hours, he opened his eyes with a strange expression. After his spiritual power recovered, he was surprised to find that his spiritual power had increased by a lot. It had already reached the 5th layer of the spirit aperture realm. This is strange. Lung Shiqi muttered. The wood area of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise and the last part of the heaven stairway had caused him to lose a part of his spiritual power. Logically speaking, the upper limit of his spiritual power should have decreased, but why did it suddenly increase by so much? He felt that the minor 5 elements chaos paradise was too mysterious. But then again, this was of course a good thing. Next, he just needed to stabilize a bit more, and he would be able to break through to the 6th layer of the spirit aperture realm. Then he habitually divided his consciousness into 2. One part was used to cultivate, and the other part continued to deduce spiritual techniques in his spiritual sea. Now he had the limitless Deadwood spell and the Crimson Ice Crystal spell, including the Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll. He needed to comprehend and deduce them. Most importantly, he wanted to recreate the move he used to defeat the Black Sphere in the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. It was fine if others did not know, but Lung Shiqi knew that the collapse of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise was most likely related to him. And the cause of all this was the ultimate move that combined the Great Radiance Fist and the Black Lotus Demon Fist. Chapter 485. In the sea of consciousness, Lung Shiqi's primordial spirit floated in mid-air. The black and white streamers around him rotated slowly, faintly forming a huge spiritual spiral. He was recreating the move of fusing the power of yin and yang. He wanted to completely master it. But something unexpected happened. Just as the black and white spiritual spiral was about to form, the fist force of the Great Light Fist and the Black Lotus Demon Fist suddenly repelled each other violently, causing the black and white spiritual spiral to collapse instantly. Lung Shiqi was stunned. He had also thought that he would fail. Back then, when he accidentally used alluring flowers for the first time, it took him a long time to fully comprehend it. However, he had never thought that he would fail so quickly. Lung Shiqi quickly composed himself and continued to try. However, what awaited him was failure after failure, endless failure. And all of them failed at the moment when the black and white spiritual spiral was about to form. What went wrong? Lung Shiqi pondered for a long time, but he still had no clue. So he began to recall what happened before he used this move. That's right, my primordial spirit went out of my body. It was also at that time that I saw the black and white threads between heaven and earth that I successfully fused the 2 6th-level spiritual techniques. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi's consciousness returned to his body. He slapped his forehead, and his primordial spirit came out of the top of his head. In the vision of his primordial spirit, there were some changes in heaven and earth. Everywhere his primordial spirit saw faint light spots of various colors, but there was not a single thread. It's completely different from what I saw in the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto heaven. What's going on? Lung Shiqi was puzzled, but he immediately thought of a possibility. That's right, the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto heaven is a special little arcane realm. Maybe it's different from the outside world. Could it be that I can't fuse the Great Light Fist and the Black Lotus Demon Fist in the outside world? Lung Shiqi suddenly felt that he had suffered a great loss. If that was the case, it meant that he had lost an extremely powerful spiritual technique. A spiritual technique that was completely superior to a short-lived one. Of course, Lung Shiqi did not give up. He withdrew his primordial spirit and returned to his spiritual sea to try to fuse the 2 techniques in another way. He spent the entire day in cultivation. The next day, Lung Shiqi stopped practicing. The reason he stopped was because there was a series of knocks on the door. Lung Shiqi whispered, "Finally, someone can't wait any longer. I wonder who will be the first to come." He opened the door and saw Di Chuan standing there. Even without Di Chuan saying anything, Lung Shiqi knew what he was here for. He was definitely here for the Soul Stone. Before entering the minor 5 elements Chaos Paradise, Lei Mayan had said that only the top 5 with the most tokens or soul stones would be able to pass the second round of the test. But now that 7 people had appeared, it meant that 2 of them would be eliminated. More importantly, other than the Lung Shiqi and the Delta Origi, the other 5 did not even have a single soul stone. In order to survive, they even gave their tokens and mustard seed bracelets to Lung Shiqi. So among the 7 people, the Lung Shiqi and the Delta Origi could pass the test by default. As for the remaining 3 spots, it was up to Lung Shiqi to decide. Whoever he gave the soul stone to could pass the test. No one would have expected that the final decision would be in the hands of Lung Shiqi. After Di Chuan came out, he only took a day to recuperate. He had not fully recovered yet, but he could not wait to find him. Even if he obtained a soul stone from Lung Shiqi, it would be enough for him to advance. So he had a fervent smile on his face, which gave Lung Shiqi goosebumps. "Brother Di, please come in." After sitting down, Di Chuan smiled and said, "Brother Lu should know my purpose." Lung Shiqi glanced at him and did not answer. He really wanted to know what Di Chuan could take out to exchange for soul stones when he used up all his resources during the crystal formation pill transaction. Di Chuan could be considered to have a better understanding of Lung Shiqi's character. Without another word, he took out a jade slip and said, "Brother Lu, I see that you've also cultivated a demonic art, and you're also a swordsman. May I know how many soul stones my rank 5 spiritual skill, Crimson Demon Shadow Swords, can be exchanged for?" Crimson Demon Double Shadow Sword was the sword technique that Di Chuan often used. It was a rare dual sword style, and was very useful whether it was one-on-one or in group battles. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, 1 kilogram of soul stones. 1 kilogram. Di Chuan was stunned. A level 5 spiritual technique, and one of the best among level 5 spiritual techniques, could only be exchanged for 1 kilogram of soul stones? If Lung Shiqi had not saved him before, he would have flipped out on the spot. Lung Shiqi also saw Di Chuan's displeasure and said, Brother Di, the others don't even have a single soul stone on them. Even if you only have a small soul stone, you can win against everyone, let alone 1 kilogram. Di Chuan understood that, but what he was most worried about now was that he wasn't the only one who had thought of coming to Lung Shiqi to trade with him for soul stones. If someone later obtained more soul stones than him at a higher price, then wouldn't he be drawing water with a bamboo basket? And according to his understanding of Lung Shiqi could definitely do something like this, so 1 kilogram of soul stones could not guarantee that he would pass the test. However, other than the Crimson Demon Double Shadow Sword, he only had the level 6 spiritual sword, and his secret technique that he could take out. The value of a level 6 spiritual sword was self-evident. It was also a weapon that he used well, and could not easily give it away. As for the secret technique, it was a top secret of the tribe where he was born and could not be leaked. Moreover, even if he gave it to Lung Shiqi, without a specific method, it would be impossible to cultivate it successfully. Lung Shiqi might not agree. Di Chuan sat on the chair with a hesitant expression. Of course, all of this was seen by Lung Shiqi. He did not say much and just waited quietly. After a while, Di Chuan made up his mind and took out 2 items from his mustard seed bracelet. They were a sword and a piece of linen. This is a level 6 spiritual sword, the Blood Shadow Sword. It can also be divided into 2. Together with the Crimson Demon Double Shadow Sword, its power is endless. In addition, there is a high-level secret technique. In terms of power, it is not inferior to a level 6 spiritual skill. Brother Lu, name a price. After Di Chuan finished speaking, his eyes stared straight at Lung Shiqi. This time, he took out all of his belongings. The reason he made this choice was because he thought that after passing the test, he would get more. Lung Shiqi was actually a little surprised. Di Chuan's determination was indeed a little beyond his expectations. Whoosh! Lung Shiqi pulled out half of the Blood Shadow Sword. He immediately felt 2 different forces rushing towards him. One was like boiling blood, and the other was pure demonic qi. It was indeed a good sword. Then he picked up the linen. The words Desolate Seal were written in a strange font. Chapter 486. Lung Shiqi scanned the contents of the linen cloth. This seal of desolation was indeed a high-level secret technique. Its effect was similar to the Beast Origin battle tattoos that he had cultivated a long time ago. They were both amplification-type secret techniques. The difference was that the seal of desolation wasn't difficult to learn, but if he wanted to continue cultivating it, he had to be baptized by the tribe. Not to mention which tribe Di Chuan was from. Where was it located? Even if Di Chuan brought Lung Shiqi to the tribe, the people in the tribe wouldn't baptize Lung Shiqi. This meant that this seemingly profound secret technique couldn't be cultivated at all. Lung Shiqi's face darkened slightly. Di Chuan, who had been observing the situation, felt his heart skip a beat. Lung Shiqi put down the linen cloth and said, I can give you 5 kilograms of soul stones for this sword. As for the seal of desolation. When he spoke up to here, he stopped speaking abruptly. Di Chuan sighed in his heart and said, Fine, the desolation seal really doesn't have much value to outsiders. I'm willing to give you 8 kilograms of soul stones for the seal of desolation. Before Di Chuan could finish his words, he was forcefully interrupted by Lung Shiqi. Di Chuan abruptly raised his head, his face not concealing his surprise. A secret technique that was useless to outsiders was worth more than a level 6 spirit sword? Was Lung Shiqi confused? Lung Shiqi said sincerely, Brother Di, we didn't get to know each other until we fought. We've been through a few life and death situations. How could I not have any feelings for Brother Di? The seal of desolation can be exchanged for 8 kilograms of soul stones. Consider it a friendship. Are you serious? Even though Lung Shiqi's words were extravagant, Di Chuan was not a greenhorn. Naturally, he still had doubts in his heart. Lung Shiqi immediately said, "Of course. But I have a small condition. When we leave, I hope Brother D can take me to the place where I got the finger bone." "Haha, it's a piece of cake. No problem." Hearing Lung Shiqi's conditions, Dichuan was even more convinced. He waved his hand, indicating that he could agree to Lung Shiqi's conditions. Lung Shiqi smiled as he took out 4 kilograms of soul stones and placed them in front of Dichuan. He made a pleased gesture. Dichuan looked at the small pile of soul stones in front of him and couldn't help but feel a little excited. With 14 kilograms of soul stones, he had the confidence to compete with the others. As long as he passed the final test of the elite club and entered the dragon vein for cultivation, he was not only confident to break through to the gang spirit realm, but also had a smooth road of promotion in the future. He suddenly cupped his fists and said, "Brother Lu, I recognize you as my brother. I will remember this favor." Lung Shiqi was just about to say a few polite words when a voice came from outside. "May I ask if Brother Lu is in his room?" This was Zhuge Puha's voice. Zhuge Puha had also come, and his purpose was self-evident. He was definitely here for the soul stone like Dichuan. Dichuan waved his hand and quickly put away the soul stone. Zhuge Puha was his biggest competitor, and he couldn't expose his soul stone. "Since there are guests, I'll leave first." Dichuan knew that he should leave, so he got up. Lung Shiqi came to the door with him, but when he opened the door he was surprised to find that not only Zhuge Puha, but also Wu Deyao, Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin had come. The 4 of them had actually come together. When the door was opened, Zhuge Puha and the other 3 turned their eyes to Dichuan. They naturally knew why Dichuan came, and at this time, they were secretly guessing how many soul stones he had taken from Lung Shiqi. Dichuan nodded casually as a greeting, and then left directly. Lung Shiqi led the 4 into the room. He also understood that the 4 of them came together because they were afraid that he would ask for an exorbitant price. It was better for everyone to sit here and have a fair bidding. "I understand why you all are here, and you all know what I want. How about this? I won't sell soul stones, but directly sell the slots. To be honest, there are only 2 slots left out of the final 5. Same old rules, the highest bidder wins. Now let's start the bidding for the first slot, and the starting price is a rank 6 resource." Lung Shiqi's short 2 sentences revealed a lot of information. For example, he, Delta Origi and Dichuan had already locked down 3 slots, and at the same time, it somewhat disrupted the 4's original plan. They originally wanted to buy soul stones, and then get the slots according to the number of soul stones, but Lung Shiqi was auctioning the slots, and the starting price was a rank 6 resource. The 4's faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. They were cursing Lung Shiqi in their hearts for being insatiable, but there was nothing they could do, especially when Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying were in the same predicament in the hidden realm, and that was that they couldn't compete with the other 2 in terms of resources. The richest of the 4 was Zhuge Puha. He took the lead and said, "Rank 6 technique, Purple Lightning Thunder Sound Record." From the name, one could tell it was a thunder technique. This was the reward he chose after completing the first round of the mission. Although he didn't practice thunder techniques, he could take it out to exchange. For example, right now it was very useful. Techniques were the most precious of all resources, and this Purple Lightning Thunder Sound Record was much more valuable than a rank 6 spiritual weapon. But Wu Deyao cursed in his heart. Zhuge Puha's words were equivalent to admitting Lung Shiqi's words, and now they didn't even have a chance to bargain. But he didn't show any weakness. This time he didn't care about the pain and quickly said, "I have a rank 6 spiritual skill, Continuous Blue Wave Spear." Zhuge Puha sneered and said, "A rank 6 spiritual skill is still a bit weaker than a rank 6 technique. Plus, my technique is a rare thunder technique, and its value is much higher than the Continuous Blue Wave Spear. Brother Lu should know what to choose, right?" Lung Shiqi nodded silently but didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying. He wanted to see what else they could take out. Shi Feiying's beautiful eyes turned and said, "I'll give up on the first spot for now." "Me too," Mu Qinglin said. Their answers were within Lung Shiqi's expectations. There were 2 spots, and the strongest competition for the first spot was definitely between Wu Deyao and Zhuge Puha. If one of the two got the spot, the other's resources would be exposed, and then it would be time for Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying to show their strength. Just as Brother Zhuge said, techniques are more precious than spiritual skills. If Brother Wu doesn't have any other bargaining chips, then the first spot. Leng Shiqi deliberately paused here. Sure enough, Wu Diao immediately said, "Wait." Then his face showed a bit of struggle. Finally, he clenched his teeth and said, "I can give you Earth Pulse." Earth Pulse. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be surprised. At the end of the Minor Five Elements Chaos Paradise, everyone saw Wu Diao use Earth Pulse to forcibly slow down the speed of the Black Sphere's descent. That strange anti-gravity left a deep impression on everyone. This was clearly Wu Diao's trump card. Who would have thought that he would be willing to trade it? Leng Shiqi didn't hide his expression. He was overjoyed and seemed to be about to agree to Wu Diao. In fact, he was also putting pressure on Zhuge. Zhuge obviously didn't expect Wu Diao to go all out. He also had high-level secret techniques, but he didn't dare to hand them over. He could only stay silent with a gloomy face. Chapter 487. Zhuge resources had already been swindled away by Leng Shiqi in the Minor Chaos Paradise. Now, other than the Purple Lightning Thunder Sound record, he really couldn't take out any other rank 6 resources. Seeing this, Wu Diao laughed. "Brother Zhuge, I heard that your Heavenly Jade Star painting sword is a rank 6 spirit weapon. Why don't you take it out and compete with me?" Zhuge immediately snorted, his handsome face becoming more and more unsightly. The Heavenly Jade Star painting sword was indeed a rank 6 spirit weapon, but strictly speaking, it didn't belong to him. It was given to him by the faction behind him that knew he was participating in the elite meeting. In short, he was only temporarily borrowing the Heavenly Jade Star painting sword, so of course he couldn't trade it. It was unknown when Wu Diao found out about this, but now he brought it out to embarrass Zhuge. Wu Diao's mood suddenly improved and he laughed. "Brother Liu, it's time for you to announce who the first spot belongs to." Leng Shiqi laughed in his heart. He had earned 2 rank 6 spirit skills for free, and he was about to go crazy from laughing. Of course, the first spot belongs to Brother Wu. Ha! Wu Diao laughed with his eyebrows raised. He even straightened his sleeves and said in the tone of an elder to a junior, "Sigh, young people should be able to keep their composure and throw caution to the wind. Otherwise, the opportunity will be gone just like that." Zhuge face wasn't just unsightly, it was even a bit red from anger. Fortunately, he was well-mannered, and he knew that he couldn't compare to Wu Diao in terms of the thickness of his skin. If he became angry now, it would only be more embarrassing. At this time, Leng Shiqi also came out to smooth things over. He didn't want his small auction to be ruined by Wu Diao. "Brother Wu, please rest for a moment. Next, we will continue with the auction for the last spot." He deliberately emphasized the word last. Shi Feiying shook her lips, and Mu Qinglin secretly clenched her fists. They could also see that Zhuge could only take out the Purple Lightning Thunder music record, which could be considered as a trump card. But to take out something more precious than this was easier said than done. Zhuge glanced at them and said, "I will still take out the Purple Lightning Thunder melody. If the other two can take out something better, I will admit defeat." Mu Qinglin's eyes were filled with dejection. He actually had a level 6 spiritual skill, but it was far inferior to the Purple Lightning Sound record. Shi Feiying clenched her teeth and said something shocking. "I can give you a 6th rank spiritual technique, and in addition to that, I..." As soon as these words were spoken, the others cast various kinds of gazes over. Although Shi Feiying's appearance couldn't be considered a peerless beauty, it was still abnormally charming. Her entire body exuded the charm of a mature woman. She was indeed a stunner. Judging from her words, she was treating him as a trade item. Zhuge eyes flashed with disgust, while Mu Qinglin was filled with surprise. Wu Diao, on the other hand, was smiling as he looked at Leng Shiqi. His eyes seemed to be saying, "You're really lucky with women." Leng Shiqi tilted his head slightly and stared at Shi Feiying with a faint smile. Not only was this woman's appearance outstanding, but she was also extremely talented. Being able to come out of the minor chaos paradise proved her strength and ability. Women of this level could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. But this woman was even willing to betray him, which showed how scheming she was. Who would dare to keep such a vicious person by his side? Seeing that Leng Shiqi didn't say anything, Shi Feiying secretly threw him a coquettish glance. She was truly charming and flirtatious. Wu Diao immediately stared straight at her, almost drooling. Zhuge Puha also coughed dryly and hurriedly turned his head away. Leng Shiqi's expression didn't change, and he said indifferently, "Sorry, I can't bear Feiying's flirtatious looks. I'll leave the last spot to Brother Zhuge." You. Shi Feiying's expression suddenly changed, and her previous charm was instantly replaced by anger. What a hypocrite. Don't think I don't know that during the first round of the mission, you deliberately gave Blood Moon credit, so that she could enter the second round. In the minor chaos elemental paradise, you also subconsciously protected her and saved her. Didn't you take a fancy to that ice-cold girl? Unfortunately, she doesn't remember your kindness and doesn't even bother to look at you. You don't even want this old lady to throw herself at you. Ha! What a stupid and ridiculous man. After saying this, she angrily opened the door and left. Leng Shiqi awkwardly took a sip of tea, only to find that the cup was empty. Mu Qinglin sighed softly. He could understand Shi Feiying's difficulties. A woman with outstanding talent and outstanding ability, would be angry if she was rejected after begging so humbly. Then he also left dejectedly. In the second round of the test, he was completely reduced to the background of others. Now there were only 3 people left in the room. Leng Shiqi took out 2 soul stones, one large and one small, and said, "First of all, congratulations to the 2 of you for passing the test. However, there is a ranking system. I wonder which one of you would like to be ranked higher?" Lu Xingji. What do you mean by this? Zhuge Puha said in a low voice. Leng Shiqi clearly wanted to use this ranking to squeeze them dry. This method of raising the price made him angry. Did the 2 of you forget? Leng Shiqi patiently explained. After the first round of the test, we also received rewards according to our ranking. The second round will probably be the same. Moreover, the person with the least soul stones will be ranked last. This doesn't sound good. When the 2 heard this, their expressions became a little unnatural. Zhuge Puha became famous at a young age. He was a proud son of the heavens and naturally valued his reputation. He forcefully controlled his emotions and didn't let himself get angry again. Wu Diyao didn't care about the ranking, but he cared about the rewards of the second round. Thus, the 2 of them were trapped by Leng Shiqi again. Leng Shiqi took a sip of tea and said, "The 2 of you don't have to worry too much. I'm not that greedy. The starting price for this auction is only 5th level resources." Wu Diao's face suddenly turned green and white. He roared in his heart. Only 5th level resources? Do you think 5th level resources are cabbages on the roadside? 5th level resources were treasures that only Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators had the qualifications to come into contact with. Coming from Leng Shiqi's mouth, it seemed like he didn't care about them. This made the 2 of them a little crazy. The reason why Leng Shiqi did this was because he wanted to use this opportunity to collect more 5th level techniques. He had a large number of soul stones and awakening pills. He could also use the yin-yang spirit convergence formation without restraint. It could be seen that his cultivation would increase rapidly. It was time for him to make preparations to open up all the spirit apertures in his body. 5th level resources were still something the 2 of them could take out. They called out techniques one after another. In the end, Zhuge Puha won. It could be seen that his foundation was still stronger than Wu Diao's. In the end, Leng Shiqi gave the larger soul stone to Zhuge Puha in exchange for 3 5th level techniques. The other one naturally went to Wu Diao. This meant that the final ranking of the elite meeting would be decided by Leng Shiqi. This feeling of secretly controlling the ranking was quite good. Not long after Leng Shiqi sent the 2 of them away, City Lord Feng Luan came looking for him again. He said straightforwardly, "The 2 of you are invited." Chapter 488. The two Darren that Feng Luan spoke of were of course Lei Mayan and eunuch Gao. Leng Shiqi had already expected that these two would be summoned. After all, the collapse of the minor chaos paradise was inextricably linked to him. Sooner or later, he would be called over for an explanation. However, he was not too worried. After all, he could be considered to be riding on eunuch Gao's ship. As long as his crime was not too serious, there was still a high chance that he could get away with it. Leng Shiqi walked into the main hall of the city lord's residence. Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan were sitting at the top. As soon as he walked in, he saw Lei Mayan's frosty expression, and his heart immediately thumped. Lu Xingji. Lei Mayan's voice was as cold as ice. This lowly one is here. Leng Shiqi bowed and said honestly. Lei Mayan was not angry, but she exuded the dignity of a superior. She said sternly, "Do you know your crime?" Leng Shiqi raised his head and glanced at her, his attitude neither servile nor overbearing. What crime has this lowly one committed? You dared to destroy the minor chaos paradise. Do you know that this item is an important treasure of the imperial court? Even if you had 10 lives, it would not be enough to compensate for it. There's such a thing. Leng Shiqi immediately revealed an innocent expression. When did this lowly one destroy the minor chaos paradise? Besides, with this lowly one's insignificant cultivation base, how could this lowly one have the ability to do so? Lei Mayan narrowed her eyes. According to common sense, you would indeed not be able to do so. So I really want to know what you did at the last moment of the stairway to heaven. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's heart moved. So they don't know what happened at the end. Since that was the case, he felt much more at ease. Perhaps the final black sphere was too powerful. The power of our all-out attack was too great, resulting in the collapse of the minor chaos paradise. Leng Shiqi said casually. Nonsense. Lei Mayan's tone became even colder. That black sphere only looked extremely powerful. In fact, it was just a test of your temperament. Even if it fell, you would not have suffered any injuries. You'd better answer honestly, or else I'll use some tricks. Leng Shiqi paused, feeling as if he was holding back a mouthful of blood. He realized that the black sphere was just an empty shell. Everyone thought that he was going to die. Otherwise, he would not have tried so hard to fuse the Great Radiance Fist and the Black Lotus Demonic Fist. In the end, you reap what you sow, Leng Shiqi said to himself. However, he felt that something was amiss. If that black sphere was really just a facade, then his fused spiritual technique alone wouldn't be enough to destroy the minor chaotic paradise. Therefore, he really didn't know what was going on. He answered truthfully, I really don't know. At that time, everyone was fighting with their lives on the line, and didn't pay too much attention to other things. Crackle. The hall suddenly flashed with traces of lightning, causing sparks in the air. Lei Mayan's eyes were also filled with lightning, as if she could turn the Leng Shiqi into ashes with just a blink of her eyes. At this moment, eunuch Gao's palm moved slightly. As if it came from the underworld, the cold air of hell rose up, instantly eliminating the lightning. Princess, there's no need to be angry. Attacking a junior is too beneath your status. Eunuch Gao said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The lightning in Lei Mayan's eyes grew even more intense as she said, Manager Gao, you and I saw it clearly back then. It was Lu Xingji who caused the collapse of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Could it be that you dare to say that this matter has nothing to do with him? Perhaps it has something to do with him, or perhaps it doesn't. After all, the minor chaotic paradise was originally a defective product. If the 5 elements were out of balance, it would only be a matter of time before it collapsed. You make it sound nice. In any case, it wasn't destroyed by your hands. Of course you don't care. When Lei Mayan thought of the punishment she would receive when she returned, the anger in her heart could not be vented. Eunuch Gao's lips moved slightly, but this time he didn't make a sound. Instead, he transmitted his voice to Lei Mayan. Leng Shiqi raised his head slightly. When Eunuch Gao opened his mouth, he knew that this matter would most likely be suppressed. He glanced at Lei Mayan's expression and discovered that she had heard something. Her expression had also calmed down. Then, she gave Leng Shiqi a meaningful look saying, You brat, your fortune is not shallow. To be able to catch Manager Gao's eye, let's put this matter aside for now. We have plenty of time in the future. After saying that, she got up and left with a flick of her sleeves. That's it. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. I wonder what benefits Eunuch Gao gave her. After Lei Mian left, Eunuch Gao raised his hand and formed a soundproof barrier, saying, Speak. How did you cause the yin and yang of the minor chaotic paradise to be out of balance? Lung Shiqi took out a jade slip. Recorded within it was the plucking flower. He said, Shurzuan, at that time, disciple had no choice but to use the Black Lotus demonic fist and this spiritual skill. Later on, something seemed to have happened to the two spiritual skills. However, whether or not this was the cause of the 5 elements being out of balance, disciple does not know. In addition, disciple tried again yesterday, but disciple was unable to use these two spiritual skills at the same time. Eunuch Gao hooked his finger, and the jade slip flew directly into his hand. He looked at the plucking flower chant, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. This was the first time he had seen a spiritual skill like the plucking flower, and he had never heard of it before. Plucking flower, Black Lotus demonic fist? Is there a connection between these two? Eunuch Gao thought to himself. He looked deeply at Lung Shiqi, his eyes without any color, as if he was looking at a stone. Lung Shiqi knew that this was the most crucial moment. If Eunuch Gao believed him, then he would pass this test. What he said was 70% true and 30% false. This kind of combination of truth and falsehood was the most difficult to distinguish. Haha. Eunuch Gao suddenly laughed dryly, saying, You don't know, but the minor chaotic paradise's origin is extraordinary. Inside you can be more in tune with heaven and earth. You may have comprehended something when you are between life and death, but it is not so easy in the outside world. However, if you concentrate on comprehending it, you will be able to reach that step sooner or later. Eunuch Gao's words made Lung Shiqi relax. Eunuch Gao's explanation meant that he temporarily believed him, but as for whether he truly believed him, he did not know. On the contrary, Eunuch Gao's words made him understand why he did not restore the spiritual skill to its original state. The original minor chaotic paradise also had the wondrous effect of being closer to heaven and earth. He also remembered that the threads seen by his nascent spirit could not be seen in the outside world. Thus he even wanted to go in and stay for a while longer. Eunuch Gao leaned back slightly, leaning against the back of his chair. You have also obtained many soul stones in the minor chaotic paradise, so passing the test should not be a problem. You will definitely go to the imperial capital, and at that time, you will have to help me do something. Lung Shiqi knew that this was the price Eunuch Gao had to pay for helping him, so he immediately agreed without hesitation. However, he suddenly remembered that he had also promised Lien Yi to do something. Looks like the trip to the imperial capital will be quite troublesome. He smiled bitterly to himself. Chapter 489. You can go back for now. Come back in 2 days. Eunuch Gao ordered him to leave. Lung Shiqi immediately took his leave. However, he wasn't in a hurry to go back. Instead, he went to find Delta Origi. However, when he saw Delta Origi for the first time, he was surprised to find that Delta Origi's cultivation had returned to the 6th layer of the spirit aperture realm. What? Are you surprised? Delta Origi was very indifferent. Lung Shiqi directly opened his supercilious eyes. He saw that not only had Delta Origi's cultivation returned, even her spiritual energy had become much purer. However, a day ago, Delta Origi's foundation was unstable due to her forceful increase in cultivation. Her spiritual energy was also rather turbid. Later on, at the last step of the heaven stairway, her cultivation had been lost, and she had even dropped a realm. Now only a day had passed, and her situation had undergone a shocking reversal? Lung Shiqi then thought of his own spiritual energy that had increased by quite a bit. As long as he focused, he would be able to break through to the 6th layer of the spirit aperture realm in a few days. All of this seemed to be a good thing. But what was the reason? Delta Origi saw that Lung Shiqi was puzzled, but she herself didn't know the reason. She could only shake her head and say, I don't know the exact reason, but it definitely has something to do with the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Lung Shiqi thought about it carefully. This minor 5 elements chaos paradise didn't seem to be a very dangerous place. First of all, the various restrictions and monsters inside were indeed hard to guard against. However, the dropped soul stones could be said to be very valuable treasures. Not long ago, Eunuch Gao had mentioned that the inside could better fit the heaven and earth. Now their cultivation had improved. It seemed that the minor 5 elements chaos paradise should be a small secret realm that was beneficial for cultivation. He suppressed the doubts and guesses in his heart. He estimated that Lei Mayan or Eunuch Gao would explain it to them in 2 days. He then took out 50 kilograms of soul stones and gave them to Delta Origi. Delta Origi glanced at it and accepted it without hesitation. With these 50 kilograms of soul stones, she could break through to the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. You must have gotten all the soul stones, right? Looks like you won't be able to run away from first place. You can also take first place, as long as you take out more than 15 kilograms of soul stones, Lung Shiqi said indifferently. Hearing this, Delta Origi's beautiful eyes flashed and she smiled gently. It seems that those people have been tricked by you. You must have gotten a lot of resources. We're just taking what we need. You should take the first place. I don't have that ability. Delta Origi's tone became a little strange. She knew that she was far inferior to Lung Shiqi. She was not qualified to be first. Lung Shiqi quickly changed the topic and said, "After this, we will all go to the imperial capital. It is very likely that we will enter the dragon vein to cultivate. It is also a great opportunity. But from then on, we will be marked as part of the Thunderstorm dynasty. I'm afraid there will be a lot of restrictions. So what? This is also a rare opportunity that will allow us to climb up the ranks as fast as possible." Lung Shiqi's eyes were shining. Only by climbing up the ranks and obtaining real power could he smoothly carry out the Blood Seed project. Actually, from the bottom of his heart, he did not want to participate in the Blood Seed project. But he had no choice. If he betrayed them, he would definitely be hunted down by the Blood Robe Pavilion. There were too many people in the Blood Robe Pavilion that could kill him. Just thinking about it made him tremble. You're right. After entering the Imperial capital, I will choose to stay in the Discipline Commission's headquarters. Only here can I truly come into contact with the core of the Discipline Commission. What about you? Lung Shiqi was silent for a moment. Of course, it was best to stay in the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. The headquarters was the center of power. Even a small Dark Thunder Guard in the headquarters could make the inspectors of the various counties bow their heads. However, he did not want to give up the foundation that he had painstakingly built in the Western Desolate Province. After all, there were many assassins from the Blood Robe Pavilion who could provide him with a lot of resources every month. He also had a backup plan in Julugua. But if he chose to stay in the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters, he would have to give up on the Western Desolate Province. He could not make a decision for the time being. Lung Shiqi looked around and then set up layers of isolation before saying, "We'll talk about it when the time comes. By the way, does the Blood Robe Pavilion have any influence in the Imperial capital?" He remembered that he still owed Lian Yi and Eunuch Gao 2 favors. If he could get the help of the Blood Robe Pavilion, it would be easier for him to do things. Delta Origi shook her head and said, "The Imperial capital is the center of imperial power. It is impossible for any sect to exist, so there is no pavilion there." Lung Shiqi could not help but frown slightly. If the sect knows that we can enter the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters, they will definitely secretly support us. Why don't we return to the sect on the way to the Imperial capital? Delta Origi suggested. Hearing that they were going to return to Mukin province, Lung Shiqi suddenly remembered something. To be more precise, it was a person, and that was Oziu. Back at the Southern Divine Peak in Mukin province, he and Delta Origi chased after Oziu. In the end, they entered that mysterious little secret realm and exchanged cultivation methods with each other. Now that Lung Shiqi was in the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm, he could go there again to exchange for the next level of the illusory technique of 1,000 revolutions. It seemed that it was indeed necessary to go to Mukin province. Fortunately, Mukin province was between Donglin province and the imperial capital. It was just a slight detour, so it was not too far away. Then, the two of them casually chatted for a while before parting. There was no need for too many words between them. They understood each other very well. After returning to his room, Lung Shiqi directly meditated and cultivated. He planned to break through to the 6th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm before leaving Donglin Province. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lung Shiqi and the others were summoned at the same time. At this time, Lung Shiqi's cultivation was already at the 6th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Even Lung Shiqi himself was a little surprised at this speed. He originally thought that it would take at least a few days to break through, but he did not expect that it would be so smooth for him to break through from the 5th level to the 6th level. It was as if there was no so-called bottleneck at all. He guessed that this might be related to the small 5 elements Chaos Paradise. Not long after, the 7 people who left the secret realm gathered together again. However, some were happy, while others were sad. Of course, the sad ones were Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin. They were very clear that they had been eliminated, and at this time, they did not hide their depressed mood. At this time, Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao sat down. The few of them bowed and said, "Greetings to Manager Gao, Lei Zhangxing." Lei Mayan waved her hand, and a gentle wave of spiritual energy lifted everyone up. She went straight to the point and said, "All of you are well aware of what is happening today. According to the rules, only the 5 of you who possess the most tokens or soul stones will be able to pass the test. Now take out your soul stones." Chapter 490. Di Chuan was the first to move. He took out the 4 kilograms of soul stones he had bought from Lung Shiqi and looked at the others from the corner of his eyes. He had some confidence in the number of soul stones he had. When Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha saw Di Chuan take out so many soul stones, they immediately gnashed their teeth. They had almost emptied their pockets and only managed to get 1 or 2 kilograms of soul stones. The difference was too big. But who asked Di Chuan to be in Lung Shiqi's group? They were selling it internally. They could only bear this loss in silence. Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao, who were sitting high above, had a strange look in their eyes. Previously, they had been observing every action of the people in the lesser 5 elements Chaos Paradise through a secret technique. They could roughly tell that Di Chuan had far more soul stones on him. But Di Chuan only took out so few soul stones. Could it be that Di Chuan had already discovered the secret of soul stones? The second to take out a soul stone was Delta Origi. She knew how precious soul stones were. She took out exactly 15 kilograms, just a little more than Di Chuan. Next was Zhuge Puha. His face was dark as he took out a soul stone. It was only about 2 kilograms. Wu Diao was even more embarrassed. His face turned red as he opened his palm. There was only a small fingernail-sized soul stone in his palm. It was probably not even 1 kilogram. As for Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin, they simply shook their heads, indicating that they did not have any soul stones. The 2 bigwigs were slightly taken aback. However, Eunuch Gao immediately looked at Lung Shiqi, who was standing at the side as if nothing had happened, with interest. Lung Shiqi acted as if he did not see anything. He took out 16 kilograms of soul stones, just a little more than Delta Origi. Lei Mayan knew that these people had a lot of soul stones. Now they only had 15 kilograms. Where did the rest go? And Lung Shiqi, Delta Origi and Di Chuan all had 1 kilogram more soul stones. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao quickly understood that these people must have already made a deal in secret. However, although they had guessed it, they did not question it. They only wanted to see the final result. Lei Mayan said, "Everyone has seen the results of this test. I hereby announce that the champion of this elite meeting is Lung Shiqi." They were followed by Blood Moon, Di Chuan, Zhuge Puha and Wu Diao. As for Mu Qinglin and Shi Feiying, they are eliminated. Everyone already knew that this would happen, so they weren't surprised at all. Of course, Shi Feiying and Mu Qinglin were the ones who suffered the most. The 2 of them had used their respective trump cards and handed over all their resources in the minor Chaos Paradise. In the end, they didn't get anything. It could be said that they had lost everything. Lei Mayan turned around and said, Although the two of you have been eliminated, the fact that you were able to come out of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise also proves your ability. Take these 2 elixirs. In addition, I will greet you. As long as you can break through to the gang spirit realm, you will be promoted. The 2 people received the medicinal pill and took a look. That was the priceless crystal formation pill. Finally, some joy appeared on their faces and they said in unison, "Thank you, Lei Zhongxing. Well, the 2 of you can leave first. This humble servant will take his leave." After the 2 bowed and left, Lei Mayan said to the remaining 5 people, "Since you have passed the second round of the test, there is a huge opportunity waiting for you in front. Eunuch Gao will explain this matter." Eunuch Gao's eyelids drooped. "As you expected, you will have the opportunity to enter the dragon vein to cultivate, but the time you will enter is different. As for the time to enter, it is related to your ranking. Lu Xingji has 10 days, and after that, 2 days will be reduced, so Wu Diao only has 2 days." Wu Diao almost spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. He could only cultivate in the dragon vein for 2 days. Of course, as long as he could enter the dragon vein, it would be a great fortune. But compared with Lung Shiqi's 10 days, the gap was too big. At this moment, Zhuge Puha was also very glad. 2 days ago, he spent a few more Tier 5 resources to get 4th place, and it bought him 2 more days. It was a huge profit. Apart from that, you can all enter the heavenly tomb for 1 day. Eunuch Gao continued, and his eyes were completely open. Heavenly tomb? This name sounded very unfamiliar, and Lung Shiqi had never heard of it. Among the 5 people, only Zhuge Puha frowned and thought for a moment. Then he couldn't help but exclaim, "Heavenly tomb? The heavenly tomb that Eunuch Gao is talking about, is it the place where the dynasty's Sky Origin stage experts passed away?" The place where the Sky Origin stage experts passed away. Although Lung Shiqi didn't know what it meant, as long as it was related to the Sky Origin stage experts, it would definitely not be simple. "That's right," Eunuch Gao explained. "The so-called Heavenly Tomb is actually a sacred cultivation ground of the dynasty. The Thunderfire dynasty has been ruling for more than 1,000 years, and there have been many experts. Some Sky Origin stage experts who are loyal to the dynasty will go to the Heavenly Tomb when they know that their lifespan is about to end. They will disperse all their cultivation, and they will also spread all their knowledge and understanding of heaven and earth. Until now, there have been hundreds of Sky Origin stage experts who have passed away. Among them, the most precious is undoubtedly the spiritual cultivation comprehension of the experts. Even if you can comprehend a little, it will be enough for you to use for a lifetime. Of course, how much you can comprehend will depend on yourselves." Lei Mayan added, "You should know that every time the heavenly tomb opens, the spiritual energy and spiritual cultivation comprehension inside will become thinner. Only those who have made great contributions have the qualifications to enter. The 5 of you have passed the test of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, so you have the qualifications." When she mentioned the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, she coldly glanced at Lung Shiqi. After knowing the origin and use of the heavenly tomb, everyone was agitated, and their excitement was almost written on their faces. The heavenly tomb was indeed worthy of its name. The comprehension left behind by the Sky Origin stage experts was simply a treasure that could only be encountered by chance. Perhaps only a colossus like the Thunderfire dynasty had the ability to create a heavenly tomb. Just as Eunuch Gao said, even if they could comprehend a little, it would be a huge gain, because they all knew that the spirit astral realm was not the end for the 5 of them. It could even be said that it was not that difficult. And from the spirit astral realm to the unity of heaven and man realm, it not only required cultivation and spiritual energy, but also the comprehension of the power of heaven and earth. As long as they could enter the heavenly tomb once, it was equivalent to opening the path to the unity of heaven and man realm. From a certain point of view, the reward of the heavenly tomb was better than the dragon vein. Seeing the 5 people's surprised and excited expressions, Lei Mayan smiled proudly and said, "Your rewards are not finished yet." Chapter 491. It's not over yet? What does this mean? The 5 of them stared blankly for a moment, then their eyes lit up. After the dragon vein and heavenly tomb, they actually still had a reward. Actually, being able to enter the heavenly tomb was already a pleasant surprise. Then what other rewards were waiting for them? Lei Mayan smiled. This time's elite meeting is different from the past. The second round of tests has never happened before, and making the elites kill each other is also something that has never happened before. Haven't you thought about why this is happening? Her words were indeed the doubts in everyone's heart. Those who could enter the second round were all elites of the elite meeting. No matter where they were placed, they were all heaven's chosen existences. But in the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, Lei Mayan had tacitly agreed that they could kill. This was equivalent to losing a large number of top geniuses. No matter how they looked at it, this was a loss. Why did Lei Mayan bring this up now? What did this have to do with their rewards? Eunuch Gao said with a hoarse voice. That's because this time's elite meeting needs to select true elites. Elites who can inherit the 4 great chiefs or the 4 great punishment envoys. With these words, Leng Shiqi's breathing became a little hurried, not to mention the others. For example, Wu Diyao's eyes lit up, while Di Chuan's face was filled with disbelief. The 4 great chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards? The 4 great punishment envoys of the Discipline Commission? This was a position they didn't even dare to think about. But now, Eunuch Gao said that they had the qualifications to inherit such a high position. Wu Diyao began to wonder if he was dreaming. That's right. Lei Mayan's voice pulled their minds back. It's also because of this that you all need to undergo more rigorous tests, which is why I let you enter the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. Speaking of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, you all have been out for 3 days, you must have noticed it. The 5 of them looked at each other. Leng Shiqi and Delta Orgi discovered that their cultivation had increased. The others naturally also felt it. The minor 5 elements chaos paradise can also be considered a paradise. The various difficulties you all encountered inside are actually tempering your bodies. Now that you've all come out, you're basically invulnerable to fire and water. The spiritual energy you lost in the wood region is actually purifying your spiritual energy to the extreme. The spiritual energy has become even purer, so it seems to have become less. It's just that you guys have been fighting all this time, so you didn't carefully experience it. Lei Mayan explained. Leng Shiqi finally understood what was going on. The tribulation of the 5 elements they had experienced in the minor 5 elements chaos grotto heaven was actually tempering their resistance and purifying their spiritual power. In that case, Delta Orgi was the most profitable. Back then, she had absorbed a large number of ghostly shadows, causing her cultivation to become unstable. Now her foundation had stabilized. After going in, she broke through 5 realms. In terms of cultivation, she was the one who gained the most. Manager Gao said that you have the qualifications to inherit the position of 4 great managers or 4 great punishment envoys, so this is your 3rd reward. When you return to the Imperial City, you can take the 4 great managers or 4 great punishment envoys as your masters. Finished speaking, Lei Mayan looked at Delta Orgi, Di Chuan, and Zhuge Puha with a scrutinizing gaze. These 3 were all people of the Discipline Commission, and as one of the 4 great punishment envoys, Lei Mayan naturally had the possibility of accepting one of them as her disciple. Delta Orgi immediately half-knelt on the ground, saying in a crisp voice, "Disciple Blood Moon pays respect to Shirzuan." Afterwards, Di Chuan and Zhuge Puha practically knelt down at the same time. Although Lei Mayan had said that they would only take her as their master after they returned to the Imperial City, who was Lei Mayan? She was not only one of the Discipline Commission's 4 great punishment envoys, but also the Imperial Court's princess. The resources and connections behind her were far richer than anyone could imagine. Moreover, she was also the host of this elite gathering. As long as it was someone who came out of this elite gathering, they would all have an inseparable relationship with her. If they could take her as their master, they would definitely have a meteoric rise in the future. Lei Mayan separately swept her gaze over the 3 people. In terms of cultivation, Delta Orgi was the lowest among them, while Zhuge Puha and Di Chuan were on par. In terms of background, Di Chuan was the most disadvantaged. He did not have a powerful force behind him, and only had a tribe that was neither strong nor weak. As for Jugapuha, he was a disciple of a hidden family, and his background was very deep. As for Delta Origi, her background on the surface was very simple and crude, and that was the Sky Origin Stage's venerable blood demon. Lei Mayan first asked Delta Origi, "Blood Moon, you are the venerable blood demon's direct disciple. If you take me as your master now, I'm afraid that the venerable blood demon will not agree." Shirzuan specifically said that the Discipline Commission has as many experts as the clouds, and capable people come forth in large numbers. If there is a chance, I must take you as my master and learn from you, Delta Origi replied. Really? The corners of Lei Mayan's mouth rose slightly. If Delta Origi's words were true, she really did intend to take Delta Origi under her. In this way, she could directly climb up to the venerable blood demon, this powerful Sky Origin Stage loose practitioner expert. Then, she would have another extremely heavy bargaining chip in her hands. This disciple does not dare to lie. Lei Mayan smiled and said, "Good. From now on, you are my first disciple." "Many thanks, Shirzuan. Quickly come to my side." Lei Mayan gently beckoned Delta Origi over. Di Chuan and Jugapuha both looked at Delta Origi with envy. While Lung Shiqi was feeling happy for Delta Origi, he also felt a bit cheated. Because before this, he had already secretly taken Eunuch Gao as his master. So to him, this third reward did not exist. However, when it was time to show off, he still had to show off. Then, he and Wu Diao both wanted to take Eunuch Gao as their master. Eunuch Gao actually put on an act for a while before making the decision to accept Lung Shiqi. Wu Diao was not surprised. One was the champion of the elite meeting, and the other was the last. If it were him, he would also choose Lung Shiqi. Everyone was clearly here to announce the ranking of the elite meeting, but in the end, it turned into an apprenticeship ceremony. It was quite interesting. Well, this elite meeting is over. Next, you will go to the imperial capital. You can go with us or go by yourself. Lei Mayan continued, but she immediately said to Delta Origi, You can come with me." Delta Origi did not hesitate and nodded obediently. She secretly winked at Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi immediately said, "Shirzuan, this disciple still has some chores to deal with in Donglin County. I will go to the imperial capital on my own later." Eunuch Gao did not say anything, which was a tacit agreement. Di Chuan remembered that Lung Shiqi had said that he wanted to take a look at the place where the evil Qi fingerbone was found. The chores that Lung Shiqi mentioned must be this, so he also told Lei Mayan that he planned to go by himself. As for Wu Diao and Jugapuha, they chose to go together. Although they did not succeed in taking Eunuch Gao as their master, they could at least get closer along the way. Thus, the elite meeting of the Thunderfire Dynasty came to an end. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.